Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Please be seated. And I trust while you've waited for us, you've had a chance to read our acknowledgement to our friends and neighbors in the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. Just before calling the meeting to order, I wanted to start by expressing on behalf of all of us on council our most sincere thanks to all of the volunteers who work in a really novel and beautiful little facility in our senior center. It's called Saks on 21st. And if you've never been there, you should go. But we have just learned today that they have passed through their volunteer efforts. They've raised over $1 million in that facility. And we're going to send a very special note of thanks to all of those people. Another item that has received quite a bit of interest and coverage is the skate park out in Glen Eagles. And I commend our park staff for coming up with what I think is I'm just giving my hand away in advance, but what I think is a really fabulous plan and solution. That will come forward to our meeting on June 9th. And also there's been a bit of media attention about Lighthouse Park and the houses that exist there. And I just want to clarify that the issue there, the responsibility for the capital upgrades does not rest with the District of West Vancouver, but rather with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And the septic system there is outdated. It is minimally functional and only capable of supporting occasional and limited use. It is not suitable for regular occupancy, and the water lines also present ongoing challenges. The DFO is aware of these issues and is currently considering replacement options, recognizing the significant capital costs involved. So we'll report further when we know more, but I just want to clarify that that is a DFO issue. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Gambioli.
Yes, I will recommend that the May 26, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be amended by considering item 3 regarding proposed Ambleside Center local area plan immediately after consideration of item 12 regarding public questions and comments, and withdrawing item 8.4 regarding council remuneration and expenses policy, and that the agenda be approved as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Steiner. Second. Any discussion? Question? All in favor? Contrary carried. Thanks very much. We'll go then to item number 4. Mr. Bailey, are you making a presentation, or sorry, Ms. McGuire? And this is regarding 1552 Esquimalt Avenue.
Sorry, I just needed help with how to share the presentation. Sorry. Thank you. I saw it. Thanks. Right. So one thing I should just say is that I don't believe the applicant is here yet, and they do have a short verbal presentation for council. I'm happy to go ahead and just see if there's questions from council, but just wanted to note that at the beginning.
Well, they've probably seen this presentation, so I think you should continue.
Okay, yeah. So good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. For consideration tonight is a preliminary development proposal for 1552 Esquimalt Avenue. So this slide shows a map showing the location of the site, which is located at the southwest corner of Esquimalt and 15th Street within the Ambleside apartment area. You can see on screen here, it shows that there are a number of apartment buildings in the surrounding area ranging in height from 16 to 17 stories. And you can also see here, you can see the existing building, which is a rental building that's 20 stories tall. And it's proposed that the site would be subdivided into 2 parcels. You can see that on the plan there, a schematic plan showing that. And then just in terms of the details of the proposal, as I said, it is preliminary, so we haven't gone into detailed design review or site planning review at this time. We would do that as the proposal progresses through the process. But as I said, the site is proposed to be subdivided into 2 parcels. So lot 1 is where the existing rental building is, and that would be proposed to remain on its own parcel and then secured as rental in perpetuity. And then the second lot, the interior lot in the block there, that's where a 19-story apartment building is proposed. And what's proposed for that is the building is proposed to be strata titled with the existing, or sorry, the proposed rental unit or proposed apartment units secured for rental tenure for 6 years. The overall floor area ratio, or FAR, is 3. The number of the total units is proposed at 324. So that includes the existing 185 units, along with a new 139 units. And then in terms of the parking, the proposed total parking spaces is 205, including 7 car share spaces. There's 185 existing vehicle spaces on the site now, so that includes 20 net new vehicle spaces. And then in terms of bicycle spaces, there are no existing secured bicycle storage spaces on the site, so the proposal would include 488 secure bike storage spaces. And as I said, we haven't done detailed design review at this time, but just to note, we do note that the plans are attached to the staff report, the preliminary plans. And then the proposed new tower is proposed to be located approximately 68 feet from the adjacent West Shore Tower, whereas it's located approximately 126 feet from the existing rental building. So here you can see the relevant Ambleside apartment policy that applies for this site and 2 other sites in the Ambleside apartment area. So for that policy, for 3 sites that include existing rental buildings, there's options for redevelopment for consideration. In all cases, one of the requirements would be that the existing rental building would be secured as rental tenure. So the 3 options include infill apartment that would be strata titled up to 2.5 FAR. The second would be a mixed strata or rental building or rent to own up to 2.75. And then the third option would be 100% rental or co-op housing up to 3 FAR. So because the proposal currently is proposed for a strata titled infill building secured for 6 years for rental, it doesn't align with the policy. And so with that, our recommendation is that council would direct that the proposal be revised before coming forward for consultation. So as I said, I don't think the applicant is here, and they were going to provide a short presentation to council. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions right now.
Any questions from members of council? Councilor Gambioli.
So I have a question, just to be clear, we just passed the new local area plan for this area. And so what you just had on the screen there showed that for strata, FAR 2.5 and rental 3.0. So this would be the first application coming forward after our brand new LEP for the tower area, and they're asking for an exception already.
Through the mayor to Councilor Gambioli, that's correct. They are proposing, as I said, to secure the new apartment units as rental for 6 years, but that doesn't meet the policy, which for a proposal of this size at 3 FAR would require 100% rental secured in perpetuity.
Right, so they're already asking us to not follow our own policy that we just created a couple months ago, or sorry, last year. And secondly, then the policy with respect to sort of renovictions would not apply either. That's my understanding.
So the applicant, I could stop sharing now probably. So the applicant has indicated that the proposal does include securing the existing rental building in perpetuity as rental tenure, and there would be no changes proposed in terms of what they've indicated to us that would require any displacement of tenants. So then and so that would mean that the rental replacement and tenant protection policy would not be applicable.
On the new building?
On the existing building.
But on the new building, they want to say it's strata, but actually use it for rental for 6 years, but the new policy would not apply. to that new building?
The rental replacement and tenant protection policy only applies to purpose-built rental
Right.
buildings, so that doesn't include strata titled apartment buildings.
So really, it's the second exception to our own policy that we just created a year ago. That's my opinion. Okay.
I get it in the sense that if this was following the policy at 3 FAR and was 100% secured rental, then yes, the policy would be applicable to the new building as well.
Right. Okay, so my last question is, it's sort of interesting when you point out the distance between the towers. So do staff have any feedback about the fact that they're asking to build this tower really close to their neighbor and really relatively much further away from their own other tower?
We don't in West Vancouver have specific tower separation requirements. However, there are other municipalities that do. For instance, the city of Vancouver requires 80 feet minimum between towers for privacy and overlook considerations. So that's something that we've looked at in the past for a proposal like this one. But as I said, we don't have any specific regulations that would be applicable in West Van directly. But it would be something we would look at through detailed site planning and design development review.
We need a
at the
good
next stage.
tower neighbor policy now. Okay, you would look at it. Thank you.
Ms. McGuire, just a clarification. The rental towers at Park Royal, I understood were done on the same basis where they are strata titled with the same kind of a rental guarantee. Is that correct?
As I understand it, the buildings at Park Royal are not strata, well, sorry, that's not true. Some of them are and some of them aren't. Some of them are secured as rental and some of the units are strata titled but are offered for rent.
So but by accepting their proposal, the current tower they have is not protected in perpetuity as a rental building, I take it.
Yeah, right now it is unprotected.
It's an unprotected building.
that's
So
right.
by approving this, we are protecting an existing rental building in perpetuity. And as I understand it, really, this is simply a method of financing. It's easier to finance a strata building. And so I suppose it's up to members of council, but the building may not get created because of the very difficult financing market that we currently have existing.
This is probably where the applicant's short presentation would have been great because that was exactly what I understand they were going to describe to council was the business case and what was being proposed and what could be considered through the process. So it's somewhat unfortunate.
So I totally appreciate and respect Councillor Gambioli's comments about the reality. The reality is, I suspect without some amendment, the building simply won't get built.
The applicant's here now.
Oh, well, just in time because sir, we start our meetings at 6 o'clock sharply.
Yeah, go ahead. So this is Bruno Wall from Wall Financial, and I know,
All
yes.
right,
Here you
Mr.
are.
Wall, thank you for joining us this evening. We have had the staff presentation, and so we'll allow you to add a few.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Your
you.
Worship, councilors. As you probably heard, our company built this building, Ambleside Tower, in 1969, 1970. We've owned and managed it ever since. And over the years, we've undertaken numerous upgrades and renovations, including elevator refurbishment and modernization. We completely repiped the building, did all the in-suite renovations, and did exterior concrete repairs and repainting. Within the next 5 years, we intend to replace all of the windows, install a new 30-year roof. In short, we're long-term investors, committed landlords, and committed to building rental properties. We have over 1,500 units in our portfolio throughout Metro Vancouver. As noted in the staff report, in conjunction with this rezoning application approval, we will secure the rental tenure of the existing 185-unit building for the rest of its remaining life, which, given how we've been keeping it up, should be at least another 50 or 60 years. We identified the opportunity for a significant infill rental building on this site in 2015 and commenced discussions with staff in 2016. Formal proposals were submitted for consideration and public input in 2019 and then again in 2021. We placed the applications on hold in 2022 pending completion of the Ambleside local area plan. We actively participated in the formulation of that plan together with staff and other impacted landlords, and we congratulate this council on its eventual approval in 2024. This rezoning proposal up for consideration conforms with the adopted LAP, except in one respect, and that is with regard to the tenure of the units. We have proposed that the 139 new units in the infill building be strata titled and secured as rental for a specified period of time. This approach is consistent with our company's past practice in North Vancouver. We have 175 units developed under a similar form of tenure and 313 units in the city of Vancouver. This approach is advantageous for several reasons. First of all, it maximizes the community amenity contribution we would make to the District of West Vancouver. It also maximizes the property taxes paid for the life of the building, 70, 100 years. As well, it creates needed rental housing in the short term, and in the future provides the opportunity for home ownership. So it provides a lot of flexibility for the community at large. We appreciate your consideration for our proposal and look forward to developing this new and innovative housing in West Vancouver, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Councillor Snyder.
Yes, I guess it's a sort of a joint question, maybe
Oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Daly or Ms. McGuire. So I'm just wondering, is it possible that there could be a process where the current rental replacement and tenant protection policy that we've recently put in place could be put on title, assuming Mr. Wall and the developer would be agreeing to that. I guess the concern is, I know that the idea of after 6 years, the likelihood of it being sold is very unlikely because the cost would be pretty extensive to go in and renovate those units again and then put those on the market. But should that, I guess one of the concerns is people moving into a rental place without the protection of being evicted down the road. Is that something that can be added to title, Ms. McGuire, and whether or not that's something the applicant would be considering to include? Because I just worry about the protection of those that move in, and then all of a sudden, after, I guess technically after 6 years, you could turn around and choose to sell some of the units.
We could. The idea would be to create flexibility in the long term. We're not proposing to make a dedicated rental, which sounds like what you're asking us to do. So we're looking at a hybrid model. And clearly any tenants that would be in there in the new building would have all the protections of the Residential Tenancy Act, the tenant relocation program, all those things would be in place.
Through the mayor to respond to the question at staff
Thank
level,
you.
I think we could ask that, and it would be up to us to negotiate with Mr. Wall and his group as whether or not they'd be willing to do that. I mean, it is something that we could put on it, but again, it sounds like, they want to have some flexibility moving forward.
Councillor Watt.
So I've got a couple of questions here. You're adding 20 new parking stalls. How full is the existing parking lot for the other, 180 some odd units?
185. Our recent surveys indicate about 60% of the stalls are used on a frequent basis.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And Councillor Snyder's asked another one of my questions regarding the tenant protection. And when were your last couple of buildings built on this model?
We started we have some that are, the most recent one is in North Vancouver, city of North Vancouver. It's 103 units, and it's in the Moodyville neighborhood, and that got finished about 2 years ago.
And so it was done under the same model as this one?
Very similar, yes.
And was the land always zoned strata?
It was choice of
Yeah.
use.
Okay. And the higher property taxes, that does interest me. And I don't know who in this room could answer that, maybe yourself, sir. How much more would we potentially gain off that land? Or maybe Ms. McGuire would know, rental versus strata?
Well, based on the preliminary analysis that we did, it's 60 to 70% more if it's strata titled.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Lambert.
Mr. Mayor, I'll get to the point. So what is the significance of the 6-year rental time limit? the business case has been explained to us. And that's a number that was cited beyond which you didn't want to make further rental commitment. But is it possible to consider extending that to 10 or 15 or 20 years? And still,
The number, I mean, it's not an exact science, but typically we would put a mortgage on initially up between 5 and 10 years. And therefore the length of tenure would line up with as long as the term of the debt. So there would be some flexibility in that regard. If it went on for too long, let's say for 20 years is what you mentioned, then there's really, then all the costs in it for extra property taxes that we're paying, the CAC would still be the same. It becomes uneconomic for us to take it out that long. You know, is it 7 years? Is it 8? I mean, me and staff, we could figure that out.
so it's basically a financing issue that,
Well, it's primarily finance. It's it would tie together with everything else that's going on with our portfolio. It would also line up with what would typically be a suite rejuvenation. So every 5 to 10 years, the buildings, the in-suite units would get refreshed and done up.
so I guess this next question is for Ms. McGuire. And that is, given that we have this hybrid model that's put before us, and I guess it does sound like it's similar to the Gateway project that was developed by Park Royal or Larco. But is there any kind of a workaround that we can do? Because sitting here as councillors, as Councillor Gambioli noted at the beginning of this session, that we've just passed a official community plan bylaw amendment on the apartment district that had set the various thresholds for different types of tenure for strata and rental and so on. And this is our first test of this particular bylaw, and we're being asked essentially to modify that. But is there, and staff has recommended, because that's what the bylaw says, that this plan should be revised to suit. But again, the hard question, is there any kind of a workaround that can make this function? And the reason I'm asking this question is that I appreciate what our intent was in the bylaw, but the project in and of itself is a well-designed building, and I think many of my colleagues on council would agree with that. And we're kind of stuck in a way with this. So Ms. McGuire, do you have any comment?
Sure, through the mayor to Councillor Lambert. So, I mean, it is at council's discretion, and in the staff report, there is an alternative motion. I think we might need a bit of wordsmithing. Maybe Ms. Dallas could help, but in the considered options section, if council wished to have the proposal proceed to the next step and have Mr. Wall's team engage in public consultation and move it forward, then that's definitely something that we can do. And, through the process, negotiate based on, what potential CACs would be available, what other housing benefits could be available through that review and negotiation process.
Mr. Mayor, can I, if I may?
Yes, thanks,
I mean,
Mr. Bailey.
Just to be quite direct, though, I mean, in terms of a workaround, there really is no workaround. The process would be, if you wanted to proceed with the application that Mr. Wall's providing, then you're amending your official community plan. There's not another process. We would be amending the OCP to be consistent with the project that's in front of us.
But what would the OCP have been for the Park Royal development? I'm confused.
The project at Park Royal that was initially supported was consistent with the OCP because it was a mixed use project. It set densities that allowed for, remember there was no infill on that. It was a brand new project, and it allowed for a mixture of rental and strata. And it also allowed for things like required daycare, and so they provided that. As part of the negotiations in that project, the Larco agreed to rent some of their strata titled apartments in order to effectively, in my view, to kind of garner support for the project, and they did that for a period of time. But that project was consistent with the policy, save for the heights that changed at the end, but that was consistent with the policy and the direction in the OCP, and hence that's why staff supported it.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli, please.
And I'll just add that, yeah, the agreement with the Gateway project is that the rental units are safe for 20 years, 20. So somehow that was agreed to in 2016. So, you know, I fail to see why we couldn't do the same here at the very least. So that's just my thought. I don't know how the vote's going to go, so I'm just going to say a couple things about public consultation. So the last time this came forward, which was in 2019, which was effectively very close to the same proposal. Of course, we didn't have the local area plan created then. Council received death threats during this public consultation process. There were death threats made against our council at the time. So I think it's a pretty big deal, actually, regardless of whether we've got this LAP in place. And it's, I don't think it's as easy as just saying, you know, we like the look of the tower. So I just want to be very careful in case this goes ahead, that everyone else on council realizes that this is not going to be an easy one. And I would just like to say that in terms of the proposal that I see, which is again very basic, that the design is very urbanized, in my opinion. It looks very urban. It looks, you know, like something that would be very comfortable in downtown Vancouver, but at the street level, I would like to see something a lot more naturalized. We have a lot of problems these days with flooding, and there's a lot of impermeable surface in this initial proposal. So I just want to say that, to put that on the record. That's great. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you. So am I correct that you have 185 parking spaces at present? And that you're going to add with this new building, which is 139 new units, you're going to add 20 parking spaces?
Correct.
Right. And that you have a 60% uptake at present on your parking?
Correct.
Correct. May I ask how much do you charge a month to park under your building?
It varies. Average is about $50.
$50. Okay. So one of the things I hear about from individuals who live in and around your building is that people don't want to pay the parking fee and they're parking on the streets. And a number of people actually resent that fact because they don't feel that one should have the right to park on a public street when you have the opportunity to do elsewhere. In fact, I think I heard, and I could be incorrect, but that North Vancouver, when they go to residential parking permits, they are not going to allow people who live in a rental building with parking stalls to receive a residential parking permit. So in other words, you're going to park under that building and pay $50. So you have quite a number of units coming in, and you know, my job is reasonably simple here, to be quite honest with you. It is merely to represent the public that put me here in the first place. And so in listening to the public, which we will hear after the fact, I'm sure, you need more parking stalls. Now, I quite like the look of your building, but I would not be approving something that is going to put all those cars out onto the street. That's number one. I know we can say, well, you're within a walkable, you know, transit-oriented neighborhood. But, you know, I have lived in many dense cities, and I promise you, people will pay a heck of a lot to have a garage somewhere that houses their car. So a goodly percentage of the people that are going to move into this building are going to want to have a parking stall for their car. And the residents of West Vancouver shouldn't have to see that car on their street. So that's number one. And the second thing in representing the public is when you move into a rental building, one of the beauties of moving into a rental building is the luxury is that you can stay there conceivably till the day you die. So you don't have to worry about something, you know, fixing the toilet, fixing this kitchen sink, whatever. And but you can stay there till you die. And technically speaking, could be a lot cheaper because you don't have to pay property taxes and so forth. So as we have an aging population base in West Vancouver, many people are wanting to sell their home and eat their house, the monies. So they want the assuredness of moving into a rental building, that they can move in and they can come out in a pine box. And with a 6-year term, you're not giving people that right or that luxury. So on those two bases, I like the look of your building, I truly do. And I think it would be an added architectural advantage. But those two big facts, no, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I just want to be really clear on something, and it's around this idea of if we allow this to go through or accept it as it is, that we actually have to make a change to our policy. Is that correct?
So through the mayor, yep, the current policy says that to get to 3 FAR, which is what they're proposing,
Yeah.
the project has to be rental. Right?
Yeah.
The other policy that goes along with that is in number 1, there is that strata, which they're proposing, is only allowed up to 2.5. So if they came in at 2.5 FAR, then theoretically it would be compliant. But so right now it's non-compliant.
Right, and in the direction of my question is not that, it's just, and I'll tell you why in a minute. We can't just override this as a variance. We actually have to make a change to our policy. And the reason I'm asking is, part of this discussion has been about, we've just set our policy. Why are we already challenging it? One of the things that actually gives me a lot of comfort in the LAP is it's a recommendation, right? It is our policy. We've gone through all this work and expertise to decide what would be best and most suitable. But as we all know, every site's so unique that I want to give people confidence that they can come in and challenge what we have. So we'll talk about this more at the LAP later, but is this an example of what we'll deal with if we set the LAP tonight at the levels they're at, and then people want to challenge them later?
Through the mayor, council always has the ability through a process, an amendment process, to change policy, to change official community plans. It provides a bit of a greater threshold for community participation in that discussion, because what happens now, especially with the provincial legislation, is with this OCP amendment requires a public hearing. So if council chose to move this project forward and it eventually got to a public hearing, then people would have the opportunity to come and give you their opinion on how they feel about, strata up to 2.5 or up to 3. And that's part of the process. We acknowledge that things change. That's why an OCP amendment process exists. So that there's a process that is in place to have things change.
Okay, well, I'll just put out there as a comment that I actually like the idea of this going forward in its current proposal for public feedback before we start changing policies and adapting our bylaws. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Snyder.
Yes, so I want to just sort of expand a little bit on Councillor Thompson's comments there, and I support the position that she's just sort of presented right there, because I too like the building, and I like the idea and the concept behind it. I do struggle a little bit, like Councillor Gambioli, with the fact that we've just introduced an OCP, and now very first project that comes forward, we start to question the decision that we made moving forward. I guess I sort of have 3 questions. Councillor Cassidy mentioned that, we have an aging population and people are wanting to downsize and potentially get into a rental sort of thing. I'm also looking at the other side as well. And that is that we're trying to offer varieties and options for the younger generations as well. And if that means being able to provide strata moving forward, I think there's another opportunity down the road for diversifying it a little bit more, affordable housing than some of the other options available in West Vancouver. I guess one of the questions is, you mentioned the difference between the 2.5 and 3.0, Mr. Bailey. Maybe Mr. Wall knows the answer to this question. What is the difference in the number of units? Assuming that you dealt with the same project that you're presenting to us right now, what is the difference in the number of units between 2.5 and 3.0? Approximately 60 units. So basically you're getting an extra 60 units for the extra 0.5 FSR then.
Yes,
Yes, Mr. Wall.
so the idea would be is that we recognize there's enhanced value and having the strata title units and the number of units. And so, as I said in my earlier comments, that will result in a higher CAC that's contributed to the municipality, as well as higher property taxes in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of great comments from everybody, you know, all of my council colleagues here, and I'm really struggling with this one in which way to go. We need the housing. We've been told we need the housing, and the housing minister is ramming that down our throats right now as we sit in this room. And, you know, it's a struggle. And what I would prefer to see, I believe, is to see if there is room for a little more dialogue on some of the points that have been brought to this table before we.
But one comment I would like to make to members of council, this isn't a decision tonight whether to approve or not approve this. This is only a decision as to whether or not we allow it to go out to the public for their consideration.
Yeah.
And one of the things that moves me quite strongly on this is the fact the agreement out of the walls would be to dedicate their existing building in perpetuity for rental. And that's very significant. And I think that the members of the public should be shown this opportunity. I suspect that the walls, if this was approved, they'll build that second building. And I doubt they'll ever take it out of the rental pool because that's not their business. It's a financing issue. And I think the public should be availed with the opportunity to comment on that.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you very much for that. So given that business model, where then would you stand on the other subject, which would be a point of contention, perhaps for the public, is the parking?
What I'd suggest is that we would want to hear from the public. We did our initial two proposals, I guess, that we presented had a similar parking ratio. We had some similar comments. We would want to engage traffic engineers to do an updated study because parking patterns change over time and change radically. I've built probably more vacant parking stalls in downtown Vancouver than I care to admit. So I think it's a matter of having that dialogue and figuring out what that number is. I mean, I'm not saying that we have the right number. It probably won't be less, it could be more. And we're completely open to what the public would see and what the professionals would provide input on, because we're only building it once. So I don't want to be in a situation where I'm building 100 vacant parking stalls that are there forever. That's just a complete waste of everybody's time and energy.
Okay, I mean, this is just a thought. It might not even be a logical thought, but one of the issues we have in the Ambleside area is parking. You know, people who come to shop in our stores and such cannot find parking. And it's often been thought that why don't businesses within our district actually turn over their parking stalls in the evening hours or on the weekend hours? Would there be any consideration, and I'm not holding you to this obviously, any consideration that stalls that you are not being used could be open for public parking?
Yes, absolutely. We've done that in the past as well. And when we met with the BIA back in the early 20s, they suggested that idea because we're only a block and a half from Marine Drive, that we create some parking that would be available for the public. That would be a matter of staff to figure out how that would be enforced and obligated, and how we would ensure we have security. But we've done that many times in urban environments where the first level or two are available for the public, and then there's a second gate where the permanent residents go through so that they still have their security.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's a fair observation, and I have been talking to our business association, and because I have friends in a lot of the buildings, there are an enormous number of parking spots underutilized in Ambleside. And really the task for us is to how to use those so we don't create more unnecessary parking. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah. And the issue of parking and parking on the streets is a common thing we hear about. Can you ever consider a proposal like this and just consider not charging your tenants for the parking?
Yes.
Yes. Or would you? I just think, I think, like you say, you've got a couple things. We hear a couple things. First of all, people don't want to pay the $50 a month, so they park on the street. And we also hear that they often rent out their stalls to other people.
Well, we don't allow that, but I'm sure it probably happens. But I think, we'll be completely rebuilding the existing parkade that's there.
Great.
So there will be lots of opportunities for bringing in better technology so we can control the parking, we can control access and
Yeah.
making sure that some of these don't happen. And, the municipality can decide to put up paid parking too. I mean, that's a whole nother issue, but I don't have a strong opinion on it. But I think parking is one of those things that is always contentious, no matter
Yeah.
what municipality you're in. We're open and willing to consider all ideas around that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Councillor Lambert, and again, I for one would prefer to see the public have an opportunity to comment on this rather than shutting it down at this point in time, but it's up to members of council. Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that the preliminary development proposal outlined within the report titled Preliminary Development Proposal for 1552 Esquimalt Avenue dated April 22nd, 2025 from the Senior Community Planner be revised to comply with the official community plan prior to advancing to a public information meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli.
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councillor
I'd
Lambert.
like to comment on that. I'd like to propose an amendment to that to delete the revision to comply with the official community plan and to advance the project to a public information meeting. And the reason that I'm saying that, this again isn't a decision on the project at this point. It is a referral, and in balance, we're gaining some much needed net new rental housing stock through the project. And to the mayor's point earlier, we are protecting some very scarce and rare affordable rental housing stock as part of the proposal presented by Mr. Wall. And not incidentally, the strata title units will yield the higher CACs which we can use for community benefits and taxes. So in balance, I think it's a good proposition for the community.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the amendment?
So can you do that? You make the motion, you have it seconded, and then you make a different motion before
Well,
it's
it's an
been
amendment.
discussed?
Ms.
Before it's
Dallas.
been discussed?
Through the mayor, as the seconder to the motion, you need to agree to the
Yeah, well,
friendly amendment.
that's not a friendly amendment, so I cannot agree. So
Okay,
the
well,
answer
then
is
I'll-
no.
I'll call a question on this motion, and then a subsequent motion can be put. I'll call a question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion is defeated.
So first, the original one.
The original motion is before you, and now Councillor Lambert could make a subsequent motion.
So hold on, sorry, you just called on which motion?
On the
Perhaps you
well,
did that a
no,
bit too fast.
we've just determined that the amendment is not a friendly amendment.
Right.
So it can't go forward.
Ah, okay,
So
so
the
sorry.
motion is
As
as
written.
written.
Let's please do that again.
Okay, so the motion is as written.
In other words, to be revised to comply with the OCP.
So.
Right.
And the question was called. I'll call the question again. All those in favor?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so and those opposed? Okay, the motion fails. And now I'd ask for a subsequent motion by any member of Councillor Lambert.
Okay, well, I would recommend that the preliminary development proposal outlined within the report titled Preliminary Development Proposal for 1552 Esquimalt Avenue dated April 22nd, 2025 from the Senior Community Planner be advanced to a public information meeting.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Thompson. I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, okay. Sorry, Councillor Gambioli.
Okay, so I don't agree with this because I really think that this reduces the credibility of council. We have just passed the tower portion of the LAP last year, and this is the very first proposal to come forward. And we're all, except for me, I guess, saying that we think it should be different. So I think that's interesting. And secondly, that the public were consulted recently, in fact, as recently as last year, when we had the public hearing on this very topic, and all of the public were consulted and said that the policy as it now exists is what they want. and we all voted for it. So anyway, I'm just saying, that's why I think we shouldn't be going down this road, and I think it really reduces our credibility as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Councillor Snyder.
Yes, I'd just like to comment. I'd like to agree with all of the comments that Councillor Lambert had made. I, for one, think that this proposal is thinking a little outside of the box, and I think that maybe that's a little bit more what we need to see in the community to see some of the advancements. And so for that reason, along with many other reasons, I think that the public deserves the opportunity to hear a bit more about the presentation and what's being proposed and the benefits. So I will be supporting this.
Yeah, thank you. And just in response to Councillor Gambioli, I don't think sending something out to the public for their consideration is in any way discrediting the council. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I was going to say something quite similar, but I also really believe that you need a product for people to truly weigh in on. So to say we've set heights and design, and that really isn't a true measure of people's tolerance for what they're willing to entertain. So I'm looking forward to hearing public feedback, and I think this council will be very responsive to the public feedback. And I think we're all up here. We'd like you to know that we are concerned about renters' stability. And I'm sure a few other great points you've taken away, but we're also in a climate now that all we're hearing about is people pulling out of projects. Builders aren't building. And if the population has tolerance for this, I would be very pleased for someone to take up that responsibility and risk to go forward with the building.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary? Councillor Gambioli. Motion is carried. Item number 5, Collingwood School. Councillor Snyder.
Recommend that council approve the application from Collingwood School for a private special event noise exemption for a graduation ceremony on June 19th, 2025 from 4 p.m. till 6:30 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Gambioli.
Sorry, but we've had a lot of problems with Collingwood School versus the neighbors over the entire period of my tenureship here. So that's getting close to 14 years. And a noise exemption, again, I think, as an issue, I don't think alone it's a problem, but I think that we should ask for something in return. And I think that we should add to this motion that they should install some kind of noise buffering material on the eastern side fences, which we and the neighbors have been asking for many, many years, which can stay up after this event.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Councillor Watt.
I've had a lot of dialogue with the neighbors in the community as well. And I would also, as Councillor Gambioli pointed out, like to see the school giving back in the same way. And another councillor who may present this has suggested, is there a reason why they can't use buses as well to help get people up there? I think the neighbors have been through a lot of disruption over time, and I don't want to make a decision to impact children on their graduation, but I do believe it's time that the school came to the table in a better manner.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yes, so I echo the sentiments of Councillor Watt and Gambioli. Councillor Watt, myself, and Mayor Sager have met with the residents and with the school, and essentially the one ask that we have made has not been met. They have the finances to meet that one ask, and yet to date this has not occurred. And since I first came on council, which was 10 odd years ago, although a break in the middle there, but this school has been a problem since, well, we'll go back to 2014 within the neighborhood. And I just am not inclined to give them this request. Public schools in West Vancouver, when they have graduation ceremonies, they take to use of downtown facilities, whether it's the Orpheum Theatre or wherever. And other private schools, when they have their graduation ceremonies, are not having to make this ask. The reason they have to make this ask is their noise level goes right over the fence into the neighborhood. And it also irritates me beyond belief that when we were given CACs for a project in that neighborhood, we are now having to use our CACs, community amenity contributions, which could be spent anywhere within this community. We are spending them in that neighborhood to mitigate the issues caused by this school. And yet this school in turn has done nothing to assist in being what I would use in brackets, a good neighbor.
Thank you, Councillor Snyder.
My only comment in regards to that is, and I've also spoken to the neighbors and don't disagree that, you know, there could be further improvements that the school could do and they could be providing as far as a soundproof fencing and what have you. But I think that those are completely separate issues where this is an application for a 2.5-hour special event request. And I think to try and, you know, intertwine this with the other requests, which I don't think are unreasonable from council and through those meetings. And I do agree with you for the, you know, contribution that they could be providing back to that neighborhood. I think that they're two separate issues. And for that reason, this is a special event for a 2.5-hour period. I don't see that you can relate the two and put them together on the same motion.
I think, sorry, Councillor Cassidy.
Is that the 2.5-hour request is going to be 2.5 hours that is going to be shared with the entire neighborhood, because it is going to create 2.5 hours of noise that that neighborhood hears throughout the day and on weekends when their fields are also in use. So where do you draw the line in the sand?
Thank you. Well, Councillor Cassidy, you and I have been meeting with this neighborhood group, and I trust we will continue to do so. And I think we will find a solution with Collingwood we have made some significant improvements in the neighborhood. Yes, we used our CAC money, but it's getting better. And I think the best way, I wouldn't want to interrupt a 4 o'clock in the afternoon high school event at this point in time. I just couldn't do that. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the fact that they've applied for the noise exemption right now, given how much noise there is all the time, it implies to me that the impact of this event will be even worse than what the neighbors are subjected to all the time. So again, I would implore the school to find some other way to mitigate around it. And if they want to do it in the schoolyard, that's fine, but it's the traffic, the incessant circling and noise just from all of that. Something has to give with the school.
Councillor Cassidy.
And so it was myself who suggested that Collingwood could arrange for buses to pick up the various attendees and the graduates of the school. They could pick them up at Park Royal or wherever they like and bus these individuals up there. And so if you're going to be enjoying your home and you work all day, when do you think you're going to be enjoying it and sitting down to dinner in that relaxation period? Chances are it's from 4 to 6:30 p.m. And the reason they're asking for this exemption is they know exactly how loud they're going to be.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli.
So I take it that the movers and seconders don't want to add the part of that I suggested about installing a noise buffering material?
That couldn't be done between now and June 19th.
Well, how do you know?
No, because the
Our
kind of
Parks Department
fencing,
just
I've been
did it.
talking to them about different sound fencing, like what we've successfully put around the pickleball courts down in Ambleside. They're looking at that. There's no possible way that can be completed in a couple of weeks before a graduation ceremony.
Can't just order that from Amazon?
Sadly, well, thankfully,
sure?
I don't know.
You
I wouldn't buy
sure?
from Amazon anyway, so.
You sure? Okay, well, I will support this motion if that is added, but otherwise I can't support it. So.
Yes,
So
Councillor.
what, yourself and myself met with them, 2 odd months ago? And this recommendation was made about the fences being installed. They have the monies, that of which we know, because we have as a group, a residents group, not ourselves as a council. I should make that very clear. They have the finances. This residents' neighborhood has looked at the finances, and yet they have done nothing. And the key word in this whole thing is they have done nothing.
Okay, the question's been called. I'll call a question. All in favor? Contrary? The motion carries. I will vote in favor. I am confident that Collingwood will address the noise coming forward. Okay, so we'll move now to the consent agenda items. Councillor Watt.
Yes, indeed. Where are we? I'd like to recommend that the consent agenda items as followed be approved. Item 8.1 regarding the adoption of council meeting minutes. Item 8.2 regarding receipt of committee meetings
You can just move it
as written.
Yeah, thank you.
Carry on.
Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. There's no discussion on consent. A question, all those in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you. Item number 9, the recommendations from the planning committee. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that council direct staff to consider referring the following items to the planning committee as written.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Gambioli.
Yeah, I just have a question for staff. So whose ideas?
This would be Mr. Bailey would answer the question.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gambioli, these 9 items were the result of a dialogue with the planning committee and myself in attendance. And this is the direction that the committee came up with in terms of the things that they wanted to see moving forward.
And Mr. Bailey, you support this, I
That's
take
my
it.
question. Does staff support
Yeah, I mean,
this?
it basically, just for any concern here, it says to consider referring. So I mean, our intent is, to work with the chair, and as our work plan items move forward, we'll make referrals as appropriate and as sort of coordinated with our work plan.
Okay.
Thanks very much. No other comments. I'll call a question. All in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you. Item number 10, Councillor Watt, the recommendation from the Finance Advisory Committee.
Yep. I'd like to recommend that council retain an independent consultant to review BC assessment processes and valuations, and that council authorize the Finance and Revenue Advisory Committee to meet with BC Assessment.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. Any discussion? Question? All in favor? Sorry, Councillor Gambioli.
Seem to be the only one asking questions today. So an independent consultant, how much is this going to cost us?
We're going to figure that out. We're proposing to potentially use the same individual, Mr. Bailey, that we used during the Cyprus negotiations. It would be we haven't determined the terms of reference, but there are some really significant issues with BC assessment that I feel quite strongly we need to address.
Okay, and so is the rest of council not going to meet with BC Assessment, or is it only the Finance and Revenue Advisory
I would
Committee?
absolutely strongly encourage every member of council that's available to meet as well. I think
Okay.
the stronger voice we have with them, the better it will be.
Okay, so we should just add "and council" to that motion.
Absolutely, sure. That's a friendly amendment.
Okay,
Yeah, no, we have some very significant issues that perhaps might not necessarily be best discussed right at this moment, but I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you. Reports from mayor and council. Councillor Cassidy.
So as everybody probably, whoever listens to these meetings know that I am the representative to the Liquid Waste Committee. And they're currently running a campaign, and this campaign might have people chuckling and so forth, but not so. So many of the items that we have to do from an environmental perspective cost us a lot of money. This one will cost you nothing but common sense. And so it is back to that which you can flush either down your toilet bowl or through your sink. Do not put any yogurt, cheese, milk, anything down your drain, because it causes what they call fat globs. And they are significant. As I previously referred, Brian Adams had a concert in Australia, which he had to cancel because this glob, and they are inordinately expensive, which comes out of your tax dollars, inordinately expensive to extract. But the new advert is going out, which is basically, do not put flushables down the toilet. They go in a bin. They are not flushables. So, and again, wash in cold water, because if you wash in hot water, you are breaking down the microfibers in your clothes, which our systems cannot extract, and they're going into your water. So while you swim at our beaches, you're floating probably in a lot of microfibers. So please wash in cold. Please put your dental floss in the garbage, and please think beyond yourself, because these are such simple little fixes that we all can help do, and it costs us nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports? Could I have a motion to, I think I'll ask Councillor Snyder to receive the report.
Sure, I'll make the motion that the oral reports from mayor and council be received for information.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy? Question, all in favor? Contrary, carried. I'm now going to turn the chamber over to Councillor Watt, who's the acting mayor, as we're going to move to the,
We still have a public questions and comments periods.
I think that
Mayor.
should actually come at the end of the.
Oh, okay, absolutely.
I think Councillor Watt
just
can
do-
do that.
amend the
Uh,
agenda.
That is the one thing we always maintain as a consistent. So I'm going to ask Councillor Watt. The next item is the Ambleside Local Area Plan, and as I'm a property owner in the affected area, even though my property wouldn't be zoned by this proposal, I will not and cannot participate. And so Councillor Watt, if you would be kind enough to take over, and I'm going to say good evening.
Okay, so I think we'll just go straight to it. Do we have a mover for the proposed Ambleside local area plan? Oh, yes, we're doing that.
So sure, I'll
Yeah.
turn it over to Mr. Hawkins. We have a staff
Right.
presentation, and then, of course, we're available for questions.
So very good evening. Excuse me, sorry. Good evening, members, council members of the public. Very pleased to provide this presentation of the proposed local area plan for Ambleside Centre. So it's obviously a significant project, so necessarily a substantial presentation. I'll break it into background and process, the proposed LAP itself, and conclude with the recommended next steps. So in terms of the why we're here and how we got here, I think the first point I'd like to make is just to describe the nature of the bylaw. So council's local area plans reside in your official community plan or OCP. So the purpose and content is actually directed by the Local Government Act. So you can see some abridged quotations on the screen. So the purpose of an LAP or an OCP is to provide objectives and policies to guide decisions on planning. So this is a relatively high level document, objectives, policies. It's a guide to future decisions. It must include the approximate location, amount, and type of development. So again, relatively high level, the word is approximate. So you'll see things like FARs or densities expressed in a range, heights expressed as a range of stories. So it's not hyper prescriptive or specific. It can include objectives for form and character. So again, high level objectives, but in the form of guidelines. So for example, you'll see in the LAP a series of illustrations. That's all they are. They're just illustrations. It's not detailed site design. And the fourth point, there's sometimes a misunderstanding that if something's in an OCP, it must happen. Council must make it happen. In fact, the legal standard is actually the opposite. It does not commit or authorize a council to proceed with a project. So just to encourage and remind folks to consider the document in front of them as a long-term guide to potential and future decisions or approvals. It's not the decisions in themselves, it's the context for them. And then beyond the legislation, I think is also want to begin by just pointing out that there's a very significant opportunity in this to advance many of the hopes and aspirations that have come up through many previous studies. I think Ambleside is the most studied neighborhood in the district. The district's produced, I think, over 30 such initiatives. We've also read and benefited from those produced by external groups, the best and most recent being the BIA's Imagine Ambleside. And I think the key point is that there's a lot of common themes across those documents. So a long-standing desire to have better integration with the outstanding adjacent waterfront, for it to be more walkable, more vibrant retail center, also a living center where people are able to live, preserve its mostly low-rise character, but make it easier to find parking and remain or strengthen its role as a home to the arts. So in a sense, when the LAP initiative began, to many people who came out and met with us at the start, it was both a question of restarting and starting the conversation. And the approach that Council directed across 2022 and 2023 was to give the public something to react to. So give them something visual, give them some options so that they could share their own ideas and begin to shape the future. What we heard from that first round of 24 events was reflected into a framework, and Council directed that the dialogue move forward by turning those framework maps into a series of illustrations and hosting another round of events and also providing a survey for input. Most recently, at the start of this year, what was heard through that previous engagement was distilled into a draft plan, and Council's direction was to publish it for community input, continue to benefit from 2 local stakeholder groups, as we have throughout a very engaged BIA and Residents Association. We've also benefited more recently from Council's Planning Committee, and then come back after that listening and refinement process with a proposed LAP. So that obviously brings us to this evening's presentation. 2 appendices, 2 staff's report, as with every phase, an engagement summary, a fair, accurate, factual record of everything that we've heard from the public, and also the proposed LAP itself. So before I begin, move on to describe that, I'd be remiss not to thank the community. So across this 2+ year process, we know there's 60,000+ people who are aware of this initiative, around 12,000 who've informed themselves, and almost 2,000 who've directly engaged. They've picked up the phone, they've come to an event, they've requested a meeting, they've completed a survey, and so on. Obviously, the next steps would be directed appropriately by Council, but should Council set the date for a public hearing, I'd certainly really encourage folks to attend, irrespective of their opinion, and to share that with Council. So in terms of the LAP itself, I won't kind of go through page by page. I'll just try to pick out what to me I think have resonated as the most important themes stemming from the process. The first of which is the public realm, and particularly 2 parts of that. So the opportunity to create gathering spaces and to improve connections. So I'll give 4 examples. So 18th and Marine, this is the Hollyburn Plaza Tower. Instead of the surface parking lot fronting Marine, create a small square, create a new connection running alongside a daylit portion of Lawson Creek if it's environmentally sound, into an activated Ambleside Lane, and down to Bellevue and the waterfront. On the other side, on the eastern side, 13th and Marine, instead of being greeted by the gas station driveway apron, create a small square, let people know they've arrived somewhere truly special. On the south side, Fresh Street Market site on Bellevue, should it redevelop, require a grocery store, but set it back, create a public plaza. There's a lot of people who spend time in John Lawson Park, so give them a reason to move further north and enter the center. And final example, 1400 block of Clyde, a new connection. It's a long frontage from Marine into Clyde, and then create some kind of plaza on Clyde, build on its character, interesting paving, the opportunity to close that road for temporary events, things like food trucks, farmers markets, and so on. Closely related to the public realm, another long-standing theme, having a more vibrant retail environment. So 3 general categories, the waterfront facing Bellevue, so southern exposure, focus on outdoor seating and patios, so things like street level cafes, restaurants, specialty retail. Moving north to Marine Drive, there is a functional role we ask this street to play for the community. So we continue to minimize the amount of certain uses at street level, but also provide for things like groceries and pharmacies. And then the northern and side streets, if you like, they're often smaller, typically cheaper rents, so provide full flexibility to support local and emerging businesses. And then the last slide on the street system, if you like, I think this already came up on a previous item, but we've certainly heard throughout this process that parking is really important to the community. So You'll see the note there that since the draft plan in January, we have removed the proposal to convert the John Lawson parking lot to an expanded park space. But what we have maintained is the commitment to increase off-street parking throughout the centre. The real restriction today is that a lot of the buildings are very old. That has impacts for businesses. It's expensive to operate. It's very expensive to renovate, to provide new business spaces, but it has an impact on the community in that those older buildings typically only have 1 or 2 off-street parking spaces behind the shops. Within that context, redevelopment is particularly useful to expand off-street parking for 2 sites. I've already mentioned them from a public realms perspective. So on left of screen, that's the Fresh Street site, right of screen, Village Square site. So in addition to providing public plazas, also provide publicly accessible parking underground. Moving on to the land use and built form perspective, the message continues to be to prioritize low rise, so 3 to 4 story regeneration. And again, you'll see the notes that since the draft council saw in January, there's actually more lots shown in grey here identified for 3 to 4 stories as opposed to 5 to 6 stories. And here the emphasis, if it's on prioritizing, it's about taking an enabling approach. So the current regulations are actually an impediment to low-rise regeneration, specifically the 2nd story office and the CAC expectation. Shown in the gray with white polka dots, there are also some other sites we're recommending for 3 to 4 stories. These are primarily gas stations. So to be very clear, we're not suggesting they couldn't remain gas stations, but if there are too many gas stations perhaps today, and if over time vehicle fueling standards continue to evolve towards electric charging, then what we do want to have is something in place that guides an alternative use. So we're proposing low-rise, street-level shops, and then offices or rental residential above. And then one of those in particular, shown on the right of screen, I've already mentioned this, the gas station at 13th, a condition of redevelopment would be providing that arrival plaza to greet people as they enter Ambleside. In terms of design, just sort of very briefly, I think when we have a predominantly low-rise plan, we want to pay particular attention to avoid anything monolithic. We've heard a lot of people in the community expressing a desire not for there to be a tunnel effect. So emphasis on varying heights both within and between buildings, breaking up those long frontages with mid-block connections and stepping back upper stories. At street level, I've mentioned things like the larger public plazas, but also insetting patios, providing awnings, weather protection, wider sidewalks, landscaping, and then making sure the building widths vary, that there's a diverse and fine-grained rhythm. This provides more visual interest. It also means there's a different range of unit sizes for business operators to operate within, which encourages a diversity, more vitality of business within the business mix. Couple of examples of the artist illustrations. So this is looking west down Marine. In the background in white, you can see existing high rises, but for the length of Marine, low rise, no more than 3 to 4 stories, but done in a way that increases sidewalk width, maintains street parking, and creates an overall better experience. Similar image this time, Bellevue looking east, so the context in the background here is the existing Grosvenor. Same message, better sidewalks, try to open up the centre to the waterfront, allow people to cross between those 2 places more easily and with greater interest. In addition to that predominantly low-rise scheme, there are 5 sites that I'll just identify here on Bellevue where we're suggesting something different. So already mentioned the central piece, the Fresh Street Market site. It's flanked on either side to the left of screen by a bank and to the right of screen by Times Square. So these are slightly larger than some parcels. They're kind of medium size, if you like. Left of screen, I've also mentioned the existing Hollyburn Plaza Tower site. And then in between, the former Masonic Hall site. So in terms of what the LAP describes, 1700 block here, again, you can see the existing context, high rises in white, the preservation of a low rise Marine. For the Hollyburn Plaza site, left of screen, any redevelopment not to exceed the existing maximum 180 feet permission, but to use redevelopment to create that new pedestrian connection I described, running alongside a daylit Lawson Creek to that plaza on Marine and a more animated Ambleside Lane. Former Masonic Hall site, so transition down from that existing tower, but make a condition of redevelopment the reprovision of community use space, and then continue the modulation, mix of low and mid-rise forms, and something more active on Bellevue than the existing bank use. Moving east a block and a half, so again, context, existing high rises in white, low rise marine. This is the Fresh Street Market site. So as described, reprovision of a grocery store, but set back to create that waterfront facing plaza, and the provision of publicly accessible parking underground. And then running to the right, east half a block, the Times Square, again, a transitional height, very low and mid, fronting the waterfront. And something I'll return to in a later slide, potentially fronting a new arts facility on the triangle shape that you can see in front of that building. In addition to those 5 sites along Bellevue, there are also 4 upslope sites where, again, we're suggesting something different to the predominant low-rise form. One of the second large site, Village Square site, central to them. On the north side of Clyde, there's also a medium-sized parcel. You can see it's larger than the narrow lots either side of it. There is also a site that is, in a sense, effectively part of the apartment area. It's off Duchess. You can see it's a northernmost site in the center. So this means it's effectively surrounded by mid and high-rise apartment buildings. And a fourth side, Clyde runs west half a block across 15th. And the opportunity to continue the revitalization of Clyde, but also with a specific objective for council to gain ownership of 1590 Bellevue. So you can see that's the triangle shown on the bottom of the screen. So I probably should make a few points. I'd like to thank the joint ownership group of this sites for approaching staff and expressing open-mindedness and interest in this possibility. I'm aware I'm obviously at first reading, and it's entirely for council to direct next steps. So I wouldn't want to predetermine any outcomes, but should this proceed and should the district gain ownership, council could obviously determine any use it wanted to make of that 1590 Bellevue site. But I think I'd be wrong not to identify that it is one of the sites that various district committees have identified as a potential home for an arts centre. And it's also the site that came up in the BIA's Imagine Ambleside exercise. So in terms of illustrations, this is looking at the 1400 block. So you can see a low-rise marine running across the center of the screen. Opportunity for this block to maintain, reflect the existing rhythm of mid-rise that you can see in white running to the right of screen, and also introduce that taller component setback from Marine Drive and use the height to be able to break up this block, create 2 new pedestrian connections, retail alleys or mews, if you like, that would lead to the plaza on Clyde that I've described in a previous slide. And then looking between 15th and 16th, this is the site that I mentioned is effectively within the Duchess apartment area. If I take the label off, you can see the form and scale of white existing residential buildings around. So this represents a pretty rare opportunity to actually take meaningful action on housing by creating a new rental project. To the right of screen, that was the opportunity to co-contribute to that creation of a plaza on Clyde. So that's on the north side of Clyde with a mid-rise building located in the space between existing upslope apartment towers. And then that opportunity to extend the emerging Clyde experience across 15th into that half block, and to do so in a way which secures ownership of the 1590 Bellevue triangle you can see outlined in orange. And I guess here's an opportunity to try to tie the various ideas of the LAP together. If you look at that triangle, you can see to the left John Lawson Park's parking lot, so the maintenance of that. Above that parking lot, the reimagined Fresh Street. You can see the public plaza, which would effectively be kitty corner to a potential new arts facility. And then above the arts facility, that redeveloped Times Square with a break between buildings that leads to an animated Ambleside Lane. So there's an intent to try to provide a cohesive vision between the upslope and waterfront facing sites. So in terms of next steps, I think, I'll recall the comment I made at the start that the purpose of an OCP is to provide a long-term decision-making tool, and we very much heard that the vision should be in context. You'll hear people in the community speak about Ambleside's natural amphitheater. It's a very good expression. It's one I agree with. It's roughly shown organically in that shape on the map. You can see bottom left, the existing Hollyburn Plaza Tower, bottom right, the existing Grosvenor building, and then there's a general arc of mid and high rises that join them. What the LEP does within this context, it proposes the maintenance of that low-rise heart, so the full extent of Marine, as well as significant portions of Clyde and Bellevue. And then that waterfront precinct, where we could introduce more height in exchange for community benefits, and then similar message upslope, integrate with that area, but again, in exchange for benefits. And should the LAP proceed, or a version of the LAP proceed, then it might be that in the next 20, 30, 40 years that the future of Ambleside could look something like this. The LAP does speak to its how it could be implemented. So the first keyword is flexible. Flexibility is definitely part of long-range planning. So it is very clear that it describes itself as a living document. What it would mean is that applicants could propose if the LAP is adopted. Council could then use it if it's satisfied it meets the LAP, or council could also amend it. There's specific language around amending for things like a hotel use, or if council felt there were deeper levels of housing affordability. For example, there's also a commitment for staff to monitor it and report back in 5 years. The two other keywords, intentionality, so recognizing that there is a priority on low rise. If the existing regulations are the impediment to that, the logical thing to do is to amend that existing zoning within the 3 to 4 story scale to actually get out the way, if you like, of that form of regeneration. And then for the other sites where we're looking for something a little different or a little special, be that public realm, parking, housing, those kinds of things, then council could consider using the LAP on a site-specific basis, looking at any applications that might come forward over the coming decades to negotiate on behalf of the community to achieve those benefits. So in analytical form, what that would mean is 80% of lots, low-rise, amend the existing low-rise zoning, 5% mid-rise to add some variety and animation, and then 15% of lots do include Tula forms, and the word include is intentional. The Tula forms would not cover the entirety of those sites, but really as described, it's the staff's role would be to put council in a position to negotiate on behalf of the community for things that the community through this process and through previous studies has identified as being important to them. So those new plazas, gathering spaces, new mid-block connections, publicly accessible parking, a new community use space on the former Masonic site, a new rental housing site, new land for an arts facility, and then more broadly for council to negotiate for the kinds of housing it wishes to see and the kinds of commercial uses council wishes to see, an obvious example being a hotel. And then also to contribute to amenities, and the key word here would be local, whether that be new local facilities like an arts facility or contributions towards existing ones within the broader Ambleside area. So things like the library, ice arena, senior center, and so on. So in conclusion, after a 2-year process, staff are recommending that council commence adoption process consideration, and concretely that would be reading the proposed bylaw or a modified bylaw this evening for a first time, and then setting the date for a public hearing. The proposal is for June 23rd at 4 p.m. to ensure there is good time for the public to share their perspectives. And then thirdly, as with all previous phases, for council to keep a formal record of everything the community has contributed to this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. And before we put it to a question, I just want to make people in the room aware that there have been several members of council that have discussed the, well, starting with the letter from our housing minister that we received just about 48 business hours ago, maybe a little more, demanding, not requesting, but demanding that we increase densification, declare the Park Royal, Taylor Way, Marine Drive corridor a transit hub with no real thought for infrastructure that would go there. Also, the demand is coming that we also revisit the Dundrave LAP in addition to this document. So there has been considerable dialogue going on behind the scenes as to whether we should be moving forward with this right now, because we've got a month right now to get into dialogue and send our response back to the province before they fully come down with what it is that they want. So there's various concerns that have certainly been mentioned to me and that I share myself, that should we have the level of density that the province is about to impose on us, are we wise at this point to consider this as a separate unit, or to take the time at the very least the next month or more to consider how the changes that are being demanded in the Park Royal area in particular, and that we work with the Squamish Nation. So there's a lot on the table today that wasn't there when this plan initially came forward. So I'm not sure whether to put it to Councillor Gambioli to move, or procedurally if there's a different motion on the table. Okay, carry on.
Questions?
Yeah.
For staff? Okay. Good. So just on that note, I wasn't invited to any discussions to talk about what the minister's letter said, so I'm just hoping there were not more than a majority of councillors at such meetings, because that's a breach of the community charter. So just saying, I would like to have everyone on council invited to conversations that happen related to those kinds of issues. But my questions relate to this report. So first of all, having to definitely thank Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Bailey about on all of the work that's been done here, as everyone can see. Just to be clear, so each of these sites, this is an OCP amendment, it's pretty general, an enabling type of legislation. So just to be clear, that each of these sites upon redevelopment would have to come back to council, just as Mr. Wall has done earlier today, to set up time for more public consultation in the future, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, to actually confirm what's going to be built. Is that a correct understanding?
Through the acting mayor to Councillor Gambioli. Yeah, correct. The making it very simple, everything's low rise. So council's choice would be to update low rise zoning within the 3 to 4 story existing envelope, but in a way that actually made it more likely that actual low rise development could occur. And then there'd be 9 sites that I specifically drew attention to, which would be 9 individual site specific rezonings, which councils of the day, and realistically we're talking decades for them all to come forward, could consider on their merit. And then it would be a process of council consideration, public notification, and so on. It will be a rezoning for each one.
Okay. And as we just saw, doesn't really matter what we say, because maybe a year later, they're going to come back and ask for more anyway. So just saying, that was an interesting little appetizer. Going to the question of the arts and culture center. So I've had conversations with many people in the community lately who are quite interested in this topic not getting lost in the mix. And you did point out in the report that there is one little kind of elongated triangle there that is a possibility that could someday be owned by the district if council's willing to create the space and do some density transfers. In terms of the context of this proposal in Ambleside, are there any other sites with a 5 to 10 year open the door date for an arts and culture center that you can see that would be possible besides that little triangle area?
Through the acting mayor to Councillor Gambioli, you know, it's certainly not the role of the LAP to pick a horse for council. If if that's the correct metaphor. There is a horse that you can run with here. I'm aware that there have been other sites identified. Some of them are obviously public land, so that would purely be a council decision. But in terms of private land, what the LAP can do, and there are references in various policies, is on some of the larger sites, things like the inclusion of an arts facility is written in policy. It's something you could consider, for example, Fresh Street, Village Square sites. Should that be something which was proposed in a rezoning consideration, council could consider it, or council could, for example, negotiate financial contributions towards an arts facility site. But in terms of actual land, based on the various conversations I've had and opportunities that have come through this 2+ year process, then it is specifically that triangle of land that it is an opportunity. And as I mentioned, I'm not here to predetermine council's potential decision on that, but it is something that the LAP could contribute. And I am obviously aware it's one of the sites that's come up various times over the last several years, I guess, at this point. So it's an opportunity that council could wish to pursue.
Okay, so you don't see within the context of this that there's nothing hiding that we're not seeing, that I'm not seeing? No, just want to
No.
confirm that from you.
No, I'm not hiding anything.
Okay,
Councillor.
no, I mean, there's not a place that's hiding that I haven't seen is what I meant to say. Okay, and the question related to, the province coming in and legislating for us. So, they've said, we want this LAP to be finished by the end of next year. Now, our track record is pretty snail-ish, if I can use that terminology. If we were to delay this second part any further, we still have the third part, which is the, what is essentially the single family residential parts of this LAP to finish. Can we get this finished in time?
Through you, the acting mayor, obviously staff are processing, similar to the acting mayor's comments.
Sorry, I couldn't quite.
Staff are processing the letter, similar to the acting mayor's comments that came in only a couple of days ago. It obviously has significant work plan indications. In summary, it's Park Royal North, 20 stories, moving down to 12 stories. That's new work. It's also the inclusion of Dunderave. That would be a new local area plan that currently isn't on council's work plan. So there is a limited amount of runway to complete both existing and now these new projects, but it's entirely council's prerogative to direct how they wish to proceed with that.
But so in other words, we would have to spend more money to hire more staff to get this done by the timeline of the province, and we would actually have to vote on it by the end of next year. I mean, with just you doing this, I don't see how that's possible.
So through the mayor out there, I'll jump in here, through the acting mayor to Councilor Gambioli, I mean, staff do have significant concerns with the amount of work that is being, I don't want to say foisted on us by the province, but that is being added to our existing work program. Slowing this down doesn't help that. If council's kind of direction here was to not proceed with this in a timely manner, that would obviously end up including, depending on what council wants to see in that interim period. So if additional work is piled onto this, then that is a concern. It may place us in a situation where we're not able to make our deadlines as imposed by the province. So I think it's December 2026 for the Park Royal plan. I think it's September 2026 for the completion of the Ambleside Dunderave plan. There's also, a request for the review of some of our development processes, including the preliminary development procedures plan. So there's conversations around that, as well as I think updating our official community plan. That's in the hopper, and any sort of associated work, with housing around that. In addition to all the current applications that we have. So it is a concern. And, I'm quite wary of that, and I'm not fully apprised of what happens if we don't make various deadlines, but that's kind of the park in front of us right now.
And here's a theoretical question, but if you could put your minds to it. So imagine we don't meet the deadline of finishing the entire LAP, which is only just a little bit like 2/3 done now after 2.5 years. We've got another year and a bit by their timeline. So what will they say? What will they do if we're not done? I suspect that they're gonna come in and rezone it themselves. And I just wonder what your thoughts are based on what's happened in other municipalities and what they've said so far.
Sure. So through the acting mayor, I mean, I think it's premature to speculate on that. I think that there's also a question of sort of the level of detail that we could go into in producing these various LAPs. So that, you know, there are a whole bunch of moving variables that I think, you know, it'd be a little bit irresponsible to start sort of making theoretical assumptions about what could happen. It is possible that the province could come in and force us to rezone certain areas. That's one scenario. But that's also, you know, I don't think we can properly speculate on this point. I think our job at this point is to receive the letter that we got 3 days ago, sort of thing, have a look at that, come and talk to council, have a dialogue. The province has given us 30 days to respond, to seek clarification on some of the issues that are in that letter. I'm hoping that provides a little bit more fruitful direction around, you know, where we might head with those various elements and what the expectation is, and then, you know, report back. But again, I don't want to understate, we are concerned about the amount of work. I think that we want to provide, you know, good planning work. We don't want to rush work. If there's an expectation from council that we want to involve the public in these decisions, which I think is quite key, which we have. I mean, as Mr. Hawkins said, I think we're up to what, 62,000, you know, good awareness, and, you know, 8 to 2,000 folks have participated, sort of thing. If we want to continue that trend of meaningful public input with our stakeholders and our residents, then yeah, I mean, we're gonna have some problems, I think, with our timelines right now.
Okay, that's all my questions for now. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Yeah, you know, so a couple of weeks ago, we brought this forward for consideration, and we all agreed, based on some feedback in the community, that council and community members needed a little extra time, and I'm happy to support that. And you know, and when I say I was feeling good about the LAP 2 weeks ago, you know, I do feel that the 2-year process has been robust. And, you know, we never seem to be able to meet all the people we want to. There's still people in the community. But, you know, our staff and a council, particularly, I think our council's very proactive too in reaching out and discussing with the community. You know, we've engaged with our stakeholders, and thank you to you, because you carry a great weight at driving a lot of the discussions and bringing forward community concerns. But, you know, my willingness to entertain the 2-week delay at that point was to say, let's talk about solutions. If this isn't working, if we're not comfortable with this, what can we do to please the public and settle council? And so my question to staff is, have you had any specific direction or recommendations presented to you in that 2 weeks?
Through the acting mayor to Councillor Thompson, no. I think council has received correspondence, which sometimes is forwarded to me via legislative services, but there has been no particular individual or stakeholder that has made a specific recommendation as to a specific amendment they would like to see council enact.
Okay, because I think one of the bigger drivers is ADRA, who've been very constructive and have sent an email. I think there are a few, but this one came in, I think today, I don't know. But if you look at it, it doesn't seem like we're so far away. Oh, it came in Sunday. And I just wonder if we as a council could actually make some recommendations tonight to help move this project forward. Would that be an effective way of addressing the issues that have come forward to us and moving forward more productively?
Through the mayor, and David, thanks for letting me interrupt here. I mean, I think that would be fantastic if council wanted to provide direction. I mean, I'm not going to presuppose that we're in, you know, question period here. But if council wanted amendments, certainly what's helped staff, you know, is to provide specificity in those amendments, give a reading to that bylaw, and then let the community weigh in on that. I mean, so that would be helpful. Any changes that come forward that council would like to direct, we would appreciate, you know, any level of direction that you could.
Yeah, and I say this because I am concerned about moving this along and becoming bottlenecked. At the same time, this is so important. And I don't want to make a decision that has a good part of the council or community uncomfortable and has a divided council. I think, you know, we want to see relative harmony here in making this big decision. This letter from the province is pretty daunting, actually. And that in itself is just a whole bundle of work. No matter what, we're going to have to rethink things here in order to meet the targets. They're pretty strong language. But I do think we've done great work on the LAP. I do think we're close. The plan has been reviewed twice by our planning committee and fully supported. And we have started to get some letters from the arts community asking us to identify a site, but I feel very comfortable that we've shown that it's on our radar. There's a few places it could go. I'm sure any good opportunity that came by would be entertained, but can you tell us, I guess I'll just ask one more question before carrying on with my rant. When will we as a council be able to sit down and discuss this letter with you to understand it? As I think as many of us have gone through, I'm full of questions here about what things mean. I don't think any of us really fully understand what a lot of things mean. So what was the time like on having a discussion around the letter?
So through the acting mayor, to Councillor Thompson, we'd like to get to you, as soon as possible. It would likely be in a closed session, as it involves sort of the reasons for closed meetings, include governmental relations, and we like to have a conversation about that. The timeline is 30 days, so you can expect that within the next week or so we'll be having a conversation.
Okay, that's great. And then I just wanted to make one more comment, and since it was inferred that there might have been some inappropriate conversations going on with too many council members. It's not my understanding or experience. I think when we all got this letter, we were all pretty charged up to pick up the phone and say, what do you think? What do you think? And there's a lot of that going on, and I was happy for it. Got to speak to our Director of Planning, Mr. Bailey, as well. And yeah, thanks.
Sorry, before we go to Councillor Snyder, I just wanted to ask a question while we're on the subject of the letter. It is implied, I believe, that they would do away with public hearings or public meetings. It seemed to be, that section of the letter seemed to be unclear to me, but that is one of the reasons that it concerns me that we do get this absolutely right, because if we sign off on this LAP, either with minor changes or not at this point, it appears to me from that letter that we will lose the ability to consult with the public on projects going forward. Is that your interpretation?
To the acting mayor, to acting mayor Watt, I think what you're referring to in the letter is reference to improving our development procedures to eliminate what we call the preliminary application meeting. And they've asked us to take a look at that. They've said they said two things: the preliminary application meeting and multiple referrals to committees. Council's already taken great steps, I think, in trying to be more efficient in terms of reconciling some of the committees and moving that function into one planning committee where we do refer items. The second piece was around an examination of the preliminary application meeting. So that's a meeting where before an application even comes, and we saw it tonight with Mr. Wall's proposal, before an application even comes, to go to the public and have a conversation. And the province is saying, hey, look, we think things could speed up if you either improved or took some steps to eliminate that. That does not mean, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We need to have as I said, we're going to be getting back to the province and asking further clarification. I think the intention is to be more efficient. It doesn't eliminate other consultation. Where public hearings are required, there will still be public hearings. And with every developer and every development that comes forward for a rezoning application, we certainly encourage our applicants to speak to the public to get a flavor of what's happening. I think the most important thing, though, is that with the adoption of an official community plan, what that should do is provide the community certainty for what's coming forward. So the applications that come forward in compliance with that have gone through. Mr. Hawkins has spent the better part of 2 years out there talking to folks. And sure, he hasn't talked to every single person in West Vancouver, but he's talked to a lot of folks. And I'm fairly confident, I'm very confident that sort of that work is reflected in the OCP, which then provides certainty for the community moving forward. So you still have those multiple levels of community engagement and participation in the process. And I think that we're going to have a conversation about, streamlining our preliminary development application process.
Thank you. Yeah, and so in that procedures section, there was a reference, it was either in the course of one or two sentences, and they did mention public hearings, but then they mentioned public meetings. So I guess you're referring to what we just did with the wall.
Sure. So public
Center.
hearings would still exist where they're required by law, through official community plan amendments. Where something's consistent with an OCP, the province has removed the requirement for a public hearing. Where there are development permits, there are still public meetings. And again, in most circumstances where developers move forward, they have conversations with the public before bringing something forward.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Snyder.
Yes, thank you. So just a couple of comments. First of all, Mr. Hawkins and your team, fabulous report as always. And I do think you've encapsulated a lot of the information that's come in over the last couple of years and made every effort to include everybody in the community, from just our average citizen to the stakeholders. And I also appreciate the contribution that the stakeholders have provided as well, particularly in this case more recently, the ADBIA and ADRA. I think have provided some really constructive comments and some feedback. I guess one of the comments that was raised by ADRA in a recent letter was 3D modeling. And I recall that we had some discussions on this previously, and you had given us some rationale on why, at least at this point, we had chosen not to do 3D modeling. My understanding is it's extremely expensive and very time consuming. Can you sort of comment on your experience with 3D modeling?
3D acting mayor to Councillor Snyder. Yeah, my expectation, it's a pretty large area, right? So there's a question of scale, and then the size of the model that needs to fit through a door and then into a room. And by the time you can do that, your real ability to see the difference in a story height is probably down to, half a centimeter or something. So it's the kind of use value at the scale of this area. And obviously this is a council deliberation. I would expect the cost to be 6 figures and not a small 6 figures. Obviously they take time to build. And then recognizing there's elasticity, story heights can go up, they can go down. Obviously, what's the long-term benefit or value of a wooden model? So, it's entirely council's prerogative to direct that kind of work, but I think it would certainly add time, it would certainly add cost, and it would be for council to determine the real benefit that it felt that would provide. So we've tried to provide very visual things through illustrations, everything's to scale, but we're also trying to be very clear they are illustrations, right? These decisions get made over decades. There's perhaps a kind of, can put people into a false position by suggesting this is it, which it looks like it is if it's built in wood and it's in front of you. It's about understanding the nature of long-term planning. Not everything, council would not be deciding through an LAP adoption the next 20, 30, 40 years of planning decisions. Council will be adopting a context to make planning decisions within.
Right, okay. And again, you said extremely time consuming, I'm assuming, to make these models.
I don't want to claim any particular expertise, but there's certainly fewer and fewer shops that do them. Staff would need to go out and get council's direction to invite expressions of interest. But obviously, for it to be of any value, it would need to have the topography, the slope, it would need to be to scale. That's going to take a certain period of time at least.
Through the acting mayor, in terms of a tool for communicating, I don't know if it's easy to pull up the presentation, but I mean, one of the things that I'm thinking of is just that last visual of the context, and see, like, basically you're seeing every building in Ambleside rendered accurately with the topography. I know it's not in a physical form, but you can see it on the page. I think that we've gone out and done the work to sort of show people different options within that. There's one example. Well, that's the example, right? That's it. I would think we would probably have to have a robust debate about whether it's worth spending $200,000 or $300,000 on a model that size And for what additional benefit? Like, that would be my question moving forward. I'm not saying we won't do it. And of course, if council thinks that that's a really useful engagement tool and a way to spend money, fine, well, we can take a look at that. But I think that, from my perspective, looking at this, and part of the beauty of something like this, a drawing like this, is if, we wanted options, and David's done this, is like, if this isn't 12 stories, it's 16 stories, it's pretty easy to change, it's not, whereas, I guess we could be a wood carver and we could hire you out to lop off a couple of floors with, with a knife or something like that. But it just becomes, it's a question I think council needs to wrestle with as to whether or not that's a useful tool and for what value.
Just a couple of other comments. I want to sort of follow up on Councillor Thompson's comment. I fully agree with all of your comments, that we want to make sure that everybody feels like they've been heard. And so I guess my question more so is for this council, is there recommendations? I mean, we've given it 2 weeks to get to where we're at right now. And we've heard from Mr. Hawkins that nothing has been presented to him as far as recommendations on changes moving forward. And I guess my concern is, by delaying this again, how much further are we getting? If we've just given 2 weeks to try and make sure that people have had a greater opportunity to respond. And now what I'm sensing is a feeling by some council that they would like to put this off again for further. And I do think that we're very close. I think that there are not a lot of, there's a couple of big issues that seem to be a bit of a concern for some. And I wonder whether or not those are issues that we can address this evening to try and keep things moving forward. And so I sort of put it to other councils as far as, what recommendations do you think can be made as far as amending things to keep the process moving forward?
I would like Councillor Cassidy speak before sharing comments.
Thank you. So I was part of the group that met to discuss this issue further. And if there was any comment on the letter from the minister, it was in passing. It was not a letter that was discussed in depth, just to let you know. And so first of all, Mr. Hawkins, I want to thank you for all your work. I do know how hard you work because you tell me all the time. Actually, I'm kidding. You know that. Anyway, you do work very hard and you are held in very high regard in this community, just to let you know that. But you also know there's a but coming. So what I would like, and a significant number of the community would like as well, is they would like that one commodity that is so difficult to buy, and that is time. So they would like to go into the month of September, to have the summer months to digest this further. And as you said, we are so close. And so whatever would be tweaked to the left or to the right, it would not necessarily be significant. Like, you're not starting from word go all over again. And so one of the items, just the very obvious item, is the public has been asking, rather than discussing matters in terms of stories, that to discuss in terms of feet, because I can build a building with 8-foot ceilings, and I can build a building with 10 or 12-foot ceilings. So they want everything done in feet. So they know exactly what you're talking about. There is some measure of contention over the Masonic Hall site, which has been designated as community use. And I do recognize probably the current owner of that site, or any future owner of that site, might actually want more than what they paid for. But in point of fact, if you buy an entity with a certain zoning, then that is exactly what you bought. So as we densify, I think that this site will become even more significant for community use. Whether we elect that it's going to be a parking garage, which the revenue from such would go back into the public purse, whether it's going to be multi-use for Boy Scouts, seniors, whatever, we are going to need that site more than in the future than we currently do. And as far as the cost of putting matters in as a scale model, yes, it may well cost money, but there is such a thing as the time value of money. So that which might cost today, 10 years from now, may look like nothing. So one of the things I know about the people who live in West Vancouver, they feel that they are inordinately privileged to live in this community, that they have the luxury of living in this community. They don't just like it, they love it. And they do want to see the redevelopment of Ambleside and Dundee. They do. It's tired and it's time, but they want to get it right. They don't want to be turning around 15 years from now or 20 years from now and going, oops. Okay, your work is significant in that what you have done, and it is significant in the statement that you are making as to how we grow as a community. So I think we owe the public the courtesy of time, and I think we owe you the respect that you are going to get the fullness of which you wish to achieve. And it's just a tweaking. It's not a let's get back to ground zero. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson? Your light was
Yes,
flashing.
yes, no, you're right. I guess what I want to try and do is there's a very succinct letter provided by ADRA. And, the things that you mentioned are all in there. They seem somewhat achievable. I just wondering how, can we discuss, my understanding, so the Masonic Hall and its community use space, it still has that zoning attached to it, right? You will not lose public use space with on this LAP. So that's there. And just in general, I feel that there's some discomfort in our special sites, right? The kind of, and it's kind of where it's getting at with the Wall Center. Can we look at these sites and just keep them more conservative and, send the message as council that we are open to inspired ideas, right? Good projects that may need more height. But I'm afraid I'm not quite sure how to go about making these recommendations so you guys can move forward. So a little direction would be awesome.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of comments as well. And I wanted to say this document, the work you have done, it is superb. And as Councillor Cassidy has mentioned and others, your work is so highly respected in the community, as are you. In particular, the Marine Drive vision, you have really listened. It is wonderful what you've put there. There's the Fresh Street site is what continually comes up to me, the 16 stories that is sitting in there. And I don't know if this is the kind of thing that we could tweak here on the fly. I've heard some dialogue about the height on Clyde. And I certainly understand that we are going to need height and density. But again, I go back to, in light of the provincial letter, would we be wise to take a little more time and just see what is requested of and demanded of us in the other areas? Councillor Gambioli.
So a couple things. Are we ready to make the first recommendation, which is that opportunities for consultation on this plan have been sufficient? That is, in other words, the past 2 years of consultation that the planning department has done. Are we willing to at least make that motion?
Is there a seconder?
Okay, no second.
Hear more comments.
Okay, well, then I'll just
There are
continue.
other mics lit up.
Okay, then I'll just continue. Because this is what I was going to say anyway, but I just thought that maybe I should ask at least that what I thought was an easy question. So as the planning staff have laid out, we've been at this for 2 years, just this part of this project. 2 years ago, all 7 of us actually walked around in Ambleside with Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Bailey, twice actually. And we looked at every single site and we, talked about how tall we thought they should be, et cetera, et cetera. Then in the fall of last year, Mr. Hawkins led 25 in-person events. complete with surveys, et cetera, and almost 3,000 inputs into this plan. Okay, so then he brought forward after that in January, the draft plan. And the draft plan was published in January. It's now the end of May. And then there was more engagement. Council asked you to go out and speak with the Ambleside Dundee Business Association, which you did. Went to discuss this with our own planning committee twice, as we heard from Councillor Thompson. Went and discussed in person with ADRA, the Ambleside Dundee Ratepayers Association, and took all their feedback into account, took all those surveys into account, and this is the product of all of that work. And so after 2 years of working on this, 2 weeks ago, we were here on the Monday, May 12th. Nobody had any questions beforehand. I met with David Hawkins on the Thursday beforehand. I asked lots of questions. I sent an email to everyone else on council. I said, meet with Mr. Hawkins if you have any questions before the meeting on Monday. There were no questions to my knowledge. At precisely 12:19 p.m. on that day, the aforementioned group, Ambleside Dundee Ratepayers Association, sent a letter, an email to all of us, which said, we don't want you to go ahead. We haven't had enough time. Well, I actually don't know who we is, to be honest, and I'd like someone to answer that question. And all 6 of my colleagues agreed to defer the issue for 2 weeks. No questions, no explanations, nothing. I was the only person that voted against that, okay? So now, 2 weeks later, we have no further suggestions. We have conversations going on behind the scenes, not public, which is not democratic, in my opinion. And we are now
Councillor
reading
Gambioli.
emails. We are now reading emails. What's the point of, yeah, what's that? What's the point of order?
Point of order is that you're talking about people having meetings that aren't in public. And I can tell you, and you're presuming or casting.
No, I'm not. I'm
aspersions.
absolutely,
Yes, you
no,
are.
no, that's your interpretation. I'm absolutely not.
That's-
I am
well,
not.
I don't need to hear.
I
your
am not
opinion
meaning
of
to
it.
say that. I am not meaning to say that. I am meaning to say that in 2 weeks, no, in the 2-week period of time. there
Councillor
have been-
Gambioli.
No, I am
Point
not
of
meaning
order.
to do that. I'm not meaning to do that, and that's not. I am not meaning to do that. I am saying that instead of having a public hearing, which is a democratic process and the process that we're supposed to be using, there are people who say they don't have enough time. There are people, you know, talking, not here in this space.
Councillor
But
Gambioli, I
anyway,
think we got the
well,
idea.
Okay, so I'll continue. And so now, today, we're still getting emails that are saying, now, dear council, ADRA would like to postpone this to September or October. Okay, well, excuse me, sorry, but I don't understand. Who is
Councillor Gambioli, I
running-
believe your mic is off.
Who is running the show here? Who is running this municipality? Is it the democratically elected councillors and the hardworking staff that are acting in public? Or is it a group, I don't even understand who is actually ADRA these days, because I know lots of people in ADRA who have not been consulted about this project whatsoever. I don't know who they represent. They are individuals who are writing to us. We now have over 50 people who have written to us just in the last 48 or 72 hours, who are begging us, asking us to forward this project, forward this to a public hearing. And we have one letter from
Yes.
ADRA saying, don't
Councillor
do it.
Gambioli, do you
Don't
have
do
a
it till
question?
September and October. I'm pointing out what's going on for the public because they're not seeing this. These emails are not being sent to correspondence. They are coming to us directly. They are, most of them not going to staff. Staff have no idea what the feedback is. This is not a democratic process. And I do not support what's going on. We should be sending it to a public hearing. It's insulting to all the people who have given feedback over the past 2 years to not send this. to a
Councillor
public hearing.
Gambioli.
You don't even know what a point of order is, Mr. Lambert. Sorry, but I
That's
want to know.
Councillor
I want to
Lambert.
know who's running
That is
this
Councillor Lambert.
municipality.
Acting Chair.
And I'm afraid it's not us.
The council procedure bylaw states that if a point of order is called, the chair must interrupt and they must state what the point of order is.
There are a lot of accusations being made. You are not giving any other member of council an opportunity to defend themselves. You are not asking questions. I'm going to leave it there for safety.
I'm not insulting anybody. I'm telling the public what the process has been. That has been the process and everyone should know.
If the point, sorry to interrupt.
I am not meaning to insult anyone.
Okay. Councillor Snyder, do you have a question?
Well, more so just a couple of comments, not so much in regards to what Councillor Gambioli is. What I'm hearing right now is that there are some recommendations that can be made, but it doesn't look like those recommendations are going to be made on the fly this evening. I think that, you know, Mr. Hawkins, you mentioned it right at the very beginning of your presentation, that this is a long-term guide and it's not an approval and it's not a decision of any project that's being put forward. That's all still to come in the future. Basically, this is setting the groundwork. And I think a perfect example is exactly what happened this evening in the Wall Center. You know, yes, we have an OCP in place and a proposal was brought to council, and it on its own merits is being sent to a public hearing. So I think that moving forward, we need to keep that in mind. I do think that, you know, maybe as Councillor Thompson has indicated, maybe we need to be a little bit more conservative in a couple of the areas that have been brought to our attention, as far as, and I'll just use the perfect example of the Fresh Street location right now. I think 16 stories is sort of what's being recommended. And then the recommendation that we should be using measurements as opposed to floors. I think those are easy fixes. And I think from my perspective are changes that can happen quite quickly and quite immediately, but I'm not getting the impression that that's going to happen here this evening. So what I would like to put forward, moving forward, and I'm reluctant to do so because I do think that we at some point we need to put this forward to a vote and to the public. My concern is by putting it to a public hearing, that the public can only raise questions and they cannot ask questions. They can make their comments, but they can't be asking questions. And so that becomes a bit of a problem. And I would like to make sure that we address these things now. So what I am proposing, reluctantly, but just because I think that it's important that we try and move forward on this whole process. And like Mr. Bailey says, you know, we are running out of time, and leaving this to September or October for first reading, in my view, is not acceptable. So what I am proposing is once again a deferral of the matter for 2 weeks, and I'm recommending that first reading be presented on Monday, June the 23rd, with a public hearing being set for either September the 8th or the 15th. I don't know how that works as far as timing goes, but I think that what that does is allows a significant amount of time between now and September for people to address this, and to use the excuse that, well, people are away on holidays. People are not away all summer long. And if they are, well, I wish I was, you know. No,
That's 4 weeks.
So, June, sorry, I'm sorry, June the 9th is the day that I was, sorry, June the 9th, I believe, was the previous council meeting. And then with a public hearing being scheduled for either September the 8th or the 15th. And I'm open to, you know, further recommendations from council, but I think that it's a compromise that can give, you know, it's 2 weeks, you know, moving forward again. But I think that something has to be presented to Mr. Hawkins. I mean, you need direction on where to go. And I think that is in council's hands to make sure that, you know, we do that. Because, you know, we've heard some of the recommendations, and what have you, and I do think there are slight tweaks that can be made and that are easy tweaks, but we need to get together as a council and make those decisions and give some direction to staff so that this can be put forward. So any thoughts? I'm open to thoughts and recommendations.
I'd like to give Councillor Lambert an opportunity to speak first because we haven't heard from him.
So as far as I'm concerned, the main driver right now is the letter that we have from the minister. That letter requires a response by June 22nd. Currently, we have a public hearing scheduled for June 23rd. That means there will be no opportunity to revise what we might present at a public hearing to the public for their consideration. And on that basis, I think we're obliged, if we are concerned at all about how we expend our resources, to address the issues in that letter, to get clarification, to see what the impacts may be on the current plan that's before us right now, and make any amendments before we take it to a public hearing. The minister's letter states, and they're going to release, or they're going to propose directives to us on or about late June 23rd. They're not specific, but they're telling us the district must amend its official community plan bylaw and zoning bylaw, not just the OCP and zoning bylaw, to modify the district's existing local area plans for Ambleside and Dunderade Village to increase the density, period. Now, we don't know if the plan that we have in front of us will satisfy their requirements or expectations for density, increased density in Ambleside. It behooves us to find that out before we take a plan forward to the public. Otherwise, we'll just end up going and redoing it again. So I think, to me, I mean, it's unfortunate. It wasn't planned this way, but it's the circumstance that we have to deal with. And I think that we're also would be wise to work with the province to the extent that we're able to come up with solutions that will be satisfactory to our district and mutually satisfactory to the district and the province. So in that vein, I do think that we have to pause the process for the Ambleside local area plan right now until we address and get feedback from the province on the issues surrounding increased density in Ambleside. So that's my position.
I certainly, Councillor Lambert is expressing my concerns as I've, stated throughout the evening. There's a lot going on here. And what I did want to ask staff, Mr. Hawkins, as most members of council up here have said, there are just a few minor areas, unless of course the province imposes something on us that would create greater changes. So is there anything stopping us in this time period of staff beginning to or continuing, I'm not sure where you're at, to work on stage 3 of the Ambleside local area plan? Is there anything preventing us from doing continued work on all the other elements that we need to do right now?
To the acting mayor, just being completely candid, I think based on the provincial Ministry of Housing's letter, staff are going to have to shift their attention to the Park Royal area. I think it is of greater public service, and we are public servants, to make sure that if 20-story towers and then 12-story towers are mandated for increasing distances away from the Park Royal Bus Exchange, I think we realistically need to focus our limited resources on guiding that. So it's a staff recommendation, but in terms of kind of work order priorities, then I think the sooner we get clarity on Ambleside Centre, the more we can shift to some of those other things. And then, for example, Dunderave, which would be an entirely new work program.
So then in taking this pause while we determine what exactly it is the province wants, that is not going to deter the planning department from moving forward and working on some of the other areas.
To the acting mayor, no, not at all. And I mean, we're not short of work. Council has to update its OCP by the end of this year. That means commencing bylaw consideration in September or October. Like this, the Ambleside Centre is one thing. Council has a series of things to do this year, a series of things to do next year.
Thank you.
Through the mayor, through the acting mayor, I just again want to provide some clarity here. I think that in terms of proceeding with work, we can pivot, as Mr. Hawkins has said, to, for example, do work around our OCP. We could, I think we're not going to move on things like Park Royal until we get that clarity from the province. So there is, there's 30-day period where we're going to write to the province. I don't know how long it's going to take for the province to write back to us, right? So that they could take all summer off. Like, I don't know. So I think what there are a lot of things that kind of get out of our control in terms of timelines. The other thing too is like, we're not going to work on, and I'm not saying it to be obstinate, but there's no point in the planning department working on this commercial stream of Ambleside unless we have some direction on what the changes that you folks want are, right? Like, I'm not going to go start imagining, Fresh Street should be 18 stories or like I don't know. So you're going to have to provide that feedback to us. We're going to have to hear from the province. So that becomes the conundrum in this, right? And so that's fine. And it's, there's, if folks want to press pause, we can press pause, but I just want to be realistic in timelines and expectations around those things.
Okay. So, in going back to the concerns that I've certainly had expressed to me, Fresh Street site, it's a large site, it's a city block. And, to see other options, it says upward to 16 stories. And my personal fear as a councillor, I can't speak for anybody else, is that with the added pressure from the province, that could creep up. So are we better to take the time, allow ADRA and others, I know they've been given the 2 weeks, but in this time period, while we are waiting to hear back from the province and to communicate with them to give our response, to look at some other options for that site? The other site, I personally have less of an issue with is Clyde Avenue. We're gonna have to take density somewhere. So 14 stories, 12, I think 10, whatever was there. Some people may take issue, myself not. And of course, there's the Masonic Hall site. But those are the only 3 areas that I'm aware of that are of great concern.
So to the acting mayor, and just to clarify, the 2 weeks that you reference, it's going to be 2 months until we hear back from the province. I think it's a month till we get them something. It's probably a month till we hear back. And then I expect that there will be some dialogue back and forth. I think, and I don't want to suppose what Councillor Snyder is talking about. He's saying like, let's move this out 2 weeks, I think. And we're asking if there are changes in 2 weeks that council would like to make. For example, the examples that you gave around Fresh Street and those sites, then I think that's what he's proposing in his motion, is to defer this another 2 weeks. Councillor Lambert has stated concerns with that. That's fine. But I think that those are the sort of what's at play right now, or is that debate amongst council, and where you folks kind of land on that politically.
Thank you. Boy. Councillor Gambioli.
I agree. We're not going to hear from the province before the end of the summer. And I think it's a bit of a red herring related to this local area plan, because they're not going to give us the detailed answer that we're looking for. What's going to happen is we're going to either have to choose between our very detailed, specific, unique plan and the alternative, which is them coming in saying, has to be 3.0 FAR anywhere within 300, 400 meters of a bus stop. That's what their plan is going to be. So, we should be sure about. Question for staff though, generally speaking, when we move something to, at first reading to a public hearing, we leave about a month of time. But is that legislated somewhere? Okay, because we don't have to leave a month. I mean, it's already been 2 weeks. It's already been more than 2 weeks. And so what's wrong with scheduling first reading on June the 9th and scheduling a public hearing 2 weeks later?
Mr. Bailey, do you want to respond to that? I was just, through the mayor or acting mayor, we need at least 2 weeks for public notification.
Right, of course.
And then we have to schedule it, yeah, so it's, 2
Well,
weeks is.
and I mean, we also don't have to have it on a Monday night. We can have it on a Wednesday night or something. Well, no, but then we're talking about June 23rd or 24th or 25th. That's 2 weeks later. Anyway, and I just note that the point is that, I don't see too many people with young kids in the room. I don't think we're really worried about people, getting ready for summer holidays. In fact, I would argue there's going to be a lot more people who are interested in this topic that will be like floating down the Danube in September and October than are going to be away in July. So, this is government, and we can't be hampered by Christmas and summer vacation and getting ready for summer vacation and going to the winery in Bordeaux, and God, we'd never get anything done. So, we're working and we got to move along.
Councillor Thompson.
Thanks. I have to say the one frustrating thing is to listen to debate centered around interpretations and opinions and speculation. It's we really got to deal with what we what's in front of us and what we know. And currently this government is something I can't predict or interpret. I have no idea of interpreting how they're going to direct us. I think, the sensible thing to do is to focus on our work. What's beautiful about this local area plan is it's our plan. And, a lot of community input has gone into it. It's not perfect. I'm sort of comfortable with Councillor Snyder's suggestion, a little less comfortable with Councillor Lambers, just because, we can't chase the tail of the government. We don't even know at some point, if what measures they'll take if we can't achieve them, let alone, I don't think we even have a choice, but there's so much they expect of us that is within our control. The rest, who knows what's going to happen. So from my point of view, I think we should carry on with the work that we're doing, focus on that, and then deal with the province when we know what our options are. So I'd rather not punt it. I really wouldn't. But if we can make some changes, and I don't want to do this again. I don't want to delay another 2 weeks and then just say, sorry, we still don't have the suggested ideas. I actually think we've been emailed some really sensible ideas that we as council can sit down and decide if we want to direct staff in that direction. So I would second a motion from Councillor Snyder.
Just
on that?
one final question from Councillor Cassidy and put it to a vote.
Oh, actually, I don't really think I have a question, but I don't have a question. But anyway, I think what Councillor Lambers had to say is both reasonable and rational. We have to reply, if for no other reason than simple courtesy, but we have to reply to the province, and in turn, the province is going to give us a response. I'm sure the province is probably well aware of what's happening this evening, and it's been well aware that virtually everyone at this table has said that we understand that we need to redevelop our town center, and we understand that density is going to be part of our future. We understand that. What we are asking is for the time, and I don't think a couple of months. And one of the things I've always heard when I became politically aware is the public, whomever they are, complains that most major decisions are made during the summer months. So it won't hurt us to delay until September. We may well just be a few fine tweaks to Mr. Hawkins' report. We're all in basic agreement, except for a few tweaks here, a few tweaks there. But we also have to look at the massive elephant in the room, which is Park Royal. And they have stated that that is going to be a transit hub, and most of us have been aware of that for a long, long time. But that being said, we do not know the height and density that could conceivably go in to that site, which may actually take the pressure from the province off the Dunderave Ambleside area. We don't know. We don't know. You don't know what the future holds. And I do not think it is asking too much to put this off until the month of September. Even if nothing changes, it gives people further time to think. And in thinking, you may well come to exactly the same conclusion, but you've had the luxury of being able to have the time to think. And I don't think that's unreasonable to ask of a council. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll just put it to a vote.
Sorry.
Yeah, I thought Councillor Thompson seconded. Did you not?
Recommend that we table this matter until June the 9th for first reading and a public hearing either September 8th or 15th. I mean, I'm good with September 8th if we need to pick a date. I mean, it's moving things forward.
Okay, so my concern is that if we vote on this and it's fails, because we need 4 to pass this, where does that leave us in our process?
Mr. Alex, could you
Do we know?
provide us some guidance?
Like, do we have to?
Mr. Bailey, do you want to
Look,
respond to
just
this?
Through the acting mayor, I mean, if the vote is 3-3, if it's split, then that fails, like that motion would fail. And then, we would be stuck in a little bit of limbo, I suppose. At a subsequent council meetings, council could put a motion on the floor and direct staff to bring first reading back at a later date. It would be just, it's at council's feet, I suppose, in terms of what you want to do.
But is there a timeline that has to pass before we can bring it back?
No, you could bring it
turn
back.
around.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if that fails, it could be brought back at the next meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, council could direct, any council or at any time could put a motion on the floor to direct action, and then you would debate that. You could debate that tonight, and if June 9th fails, then I don't know, pick a next date. And that's where you're going to be in the next meeting, right? Because I mean, unless there's something that happened, and maybe you can go away and talk amongst yourselves, and then come back and provide a subsequent date once we perhaps hear from the province or something. But that would be up to council to provide that direction.
Should we? No appetite to go and talk amongst ourselves? No.
I don't think we can do that.
That was the
No.
suggestion, was it not?
No.
No.
No, okay. I was thinking a 5-minute recess
See you
here.
in 10
I was
minutes.
just hoping.
No.
Yeah,
Well, I think what Councillor Snyder is proposing is reasonable. I would like to support it if we can't move this through this evening. So I will second that if you want to take it to a vote.
Nobody's made a motion.
Acting Chair? Can I make
Ms.
a
Dallas, could
small-
we get some procedural advice?
Yes, so the motion that was moved and seconded is that the proposed Ambleside Center local area plan be deferred to June 9th, regular council meeting for consideration of first reading, and to set the date for a public hearing to be held on either September 8th or 15th. I would recommend leaving out the latter part about the public hearing and just leaving it at for consideration of first reading, because council is then holding yourself to that, and things may change. Would you like me to read the motion one more time?
Yes, please.
That the proposed Ambleside Center local area plan be deferred to the June 9th, 2025 regular council meeting for consideration of first reading.
Through the acting mayor, if I may, I need to weigh in on this a little bit. So at that June 9th meeting, it's essentially the same as tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
What you have to be able to do on the June the 9th is to provide, well, you have to give first reading to the bylaw or defeat it. if you want to make subsequent amendments to things like use density, tenure, scope of the area, no, you don't have to do that now, but you have to do that on June the 9th, like when you give it first reading. So you have until that time, what's that? That's 2 weeks to figure that out.
I'm going to add that I'm not comfortable with it for all the reasons that Councillor Lambert has cited and myself with respects to the consultation, with the province at this point. So from how I'm reading this table, yeah, I'll just call the question then. Yeah.
Once the
But
question's been called, it has to proceed to a vote.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor? You're not in favor? Opposed? Yeah, that's it. So, oh yeah, sorry.
The motion has been defeated.
This moment, public questions? Invited.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, is there a speakers list, Ms. Dallas?
For this item, no.
We have at least one name on the speakers list. For
for-
public questions and comments, we've moved on.
Sorry, to confirm, council doesn't wish to make any further motions on this item. Okay,
No, we don't. So public questions.
Nick Tsangarakis is the first and perhaps the only name on the list. I'll check. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Nick Tsangarakis. I live in Ambleside. And it was good to hear Mr. Hawkins paint a picture of what our neighborhood might look like 10 years or 20 years out. I'd like to talk, speaking to a mic, of course. Thank you. I'd like to talk about our urban forest management situation. On April the 11th, Council considered a motion to protect trees greater than 20 centimeters in diameter on private development properties. Now, by any measure, this was a benign motion. The motion that was put in front of you was to direct staff to do some analysis, maybe consider the extent to which this motion would address the root cause, which has been very well defined, and that is trees are being cut down on private properties when they are being developed, and then come back to you with some recommendations. Councillors Lambert, Thompson and Watt voted no in response to this motion, and Councillors Gambioli and Cassidy voted yes. Quite frankly, I really find this very hard to understand, given the facts that you have heard repeatedly. In the interest of time, I'll just cover 2. Our canopy is shrinking. In just 3 years, the canopy cover has decreased by 2%. 1% canopy cover represents 23,000 trees. The source of this statistic is the city of Vancouver and their city arborist. So in 3 years, we've lost in the vicinity of approximately 40,000 trees. Second fact, not the first time you've heard this, is that residents want action. Since 2016, there have been 25 public engagement steps with over 2,000 resident inputs. The overwhelming message, protect our trees. And in fact, most residents, and the facts are there, and you have seen them in the past, most residents want our canopy to grow, not to shrink. There's been a lot of discourse today about the importance of democracy and the importance of listening to the voice of our community And I would suggest that in this instance and on this topic, it has not happened. You have surfaced.
That's time, sir.
Can I have another minute?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Continue.
I'm going to speak louder. Sorry, go faster and speak louder. You have surfaced concerns to protecting trees. Many of these concerns are legitimate. And I and others have provided potential solutions to the concerns and obstacles that you brought to the fore. With your permission, we don't have time to cover those concerns, proposed solutions. With your permission, I will send you a summary of those after this meeting. Since this section of your agenda is for public comments and questions, I have two questions for you. The first one is, do you support the longer term vision to achieve a 52% canopy cover, which is a no net loss target based on the initial benchmark? And if so, how are your actions and decisions supporting the vision? Second question, whose interests are you focused on? Is it our residents who have spoken time and time again, or a narrow stakeholder group who do not want our trees protected? Finally, and in summary, let me remind you that the ecological benefits of trees in our district is over $600 million. Protecting these assets is not only good stewardship, it is your duty and your obligation. I urge you to lead with vision. I urge you to trust the data and listen to the voices of our community.
Thank you.
Happy to hear any comments or field any questions. In the spirit of, I'm sorry.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for your presentation. I am completely in support of what you have to say. And interestingly enough, I've noticed around the community, there seems to be quite a number of trees of late that are fresh cuts, which I am quite surprised at. I don't know if there was a sale on tree cutting, but it definitely looks it. And I am in complete agreement with what you've had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that I wouldn't.
It's okay. Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Gary Porosnik.
I'm here to talk about the process you've just gone through. And I've been looking at this for 3 years with an objective mind as a court officer who has to bring objective information to the courts to deal with major issues. First of all, I'm a member of ADRA. I have never received any request to support any of the submissions. The comment made in the letter to you 2 days ago was, we want a village. You can't build affordable housing on that village. It's in there. And we have to build affordable housing because this municipality has lost thousands of families, kids, grandkids, and older people who can't live in affordable housing. We don't have people to look after our older people because those people don't live here anymore. And it's too far to get here. So we're not sustainable. So ADRA has about 300 members. And I know many of them never get consulted. There are what, 30,000 voters in this municipality? So I think the province understands this, that we have a small group that doesn't want West Van to grow. And that's quite clear. And you can just look at the history for the last several decades. And so we're not economic, and the province sees that, and so do a lot of people that live here. I've probably talked to 300 or 400 people in Ambleside and Dunderave who want to see density, and they want to see their kids live here, they want to see teachers live here. And I think really council needs to stand up and to focus on what the real community is saying. Now, another thing, Mr. Hawkins said that these plans are subject to the market test. We don't know if these plans will produce market housing or affordable market retail. The hardware store is leaving, costing them $20,000 a month in rent now, and they can't afford the new stuff. So all these businesses are leaving. We don't have the population to support them. And so one of the things we do when we're looking at a problem real estate is we hire a retail consultant who tells us what's your market going to demand for products, services, and what kind of businesses move there, and what kind of economics look at that. I don't think that study's been done. So we're producing these densities, and I don't see any market test to see whether in fact you can build affordable housing or affordable commercial retail. That's missing. So we can go talk to 30,000 West Van people who don't know and say, gee, I'd like to see more trees or lower buildings, etc. But the market test is a financial test.
That's time, sir.
And so I really encourage you to look at that stuff as part of what you're looking at, because developers aren't going to come unless that's going to work, and people aren't going to stay unless that's going to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Andy Krawczyk.
Thank you, Council. I would have to say that this probably tonight is one of the most disappointing nights that I have been witness to as an observer, as a person that has been in and out of council over the last 20 years that we have lived in West Vancouver. Why? Because the process that, as was explained over and over again, has taken at least 2 years, has taken a tremendous amount of work hours from staff, never mind the 7 of you sitting here, is derailed in the very, very last minute, not once, but twice in the last 2 weeks, by one particular letter. Think about that. George Orwell wrote a great book back in the 30s. No, I'm not going to talk about 1984. I'm going to talk about Animal Farm. And I'm going to talk about the great quote of Napoleon, who said, all men are created equal. It's just that some are a little bit more equal than others. Somehow, council seems to think that there is 1 or 2 organizations in this community whose equivalence is a little higher than others. Because at the same time as you received any number of letters saying, what about this, what about that? I know you also received that many more letters that said, please take this to public hearing. Did I hear anyone, with one exception, I did not hear any council members talk about those letters tonight. And that is why I walk away from this disappointed. Because of what you've done tonight, who knows, how can I trust the next time that you're ready for the next meeting that someone is not going to give you a last minute letter? Napoleon was right. Some persons, I'm going to take it up to 2025, are just a little more equal than others. Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Maureen O'Brien.
Hi, I think you are all quite well aware of how the Maureen O'Brien, Ambleside Dundry Business Improvement Association. I think everyone's aware of how the BIA feels about moving forward with this. It is disappointing that 2 weeks in a row you have deferred this yet again. I do know a lot of our members wrote in supporting this, and obviously those emails have been disregarded, which is unfortunate. I know that the letter from the provincial government had come forward. I read it myself thoroughly, and I don't see anything in Ambleside that they wanted to see different. They seem to be fine with the 1,200 units recommended. The increase in Ambleside seemed to be in the residential north of the commercial, from what I saw. And I think that 1,200 units, regardless of what happens at Park Royal, still needs to be in the plan. So we need people to live in our commercial area in order to have a vibrant commercial area. Our shops are dying, our businesses our buildings are old. There have been 33 studies in almost 80 years, and they all say the same thing. We need to revitalize. In 1956, the study said that 35% of our buildings were end of life. Most of those buildings are still there. What does that mean now? We have buildings that are sitting empty because they cost too much to bring up to code. So they're going to sit there and rot. We have another building that's very well taken care of, but because of the new fire codes, they had to put another $20,000 spraying something on a concrete wall. The codes are changing, making it way more difficult for our businesses to open. And I hear from the community all the time on what kind of businesses they want here. Why can't we have a bookstore? Why can't we have a shoe store? No one's going to open a bookstore in a building that's ready to, burn down because it is old and not taken care of. So I do hope that you will reconsider and bring this forward again in 2 weeks. I think it's very, very fair to have a public hearing in September. That still gives the summer to do everything. I don't know what else that can be heard. Everyone has spoken. We have heard it from the studies and the engagements that your staff have done. So I don't know what's going to change in 2 more months. Just because a certain group is not getting the answers they want, I don't think it's fair that you're punishing the rest of the community that have given their feedback and have shared what their vision for Ambleside is. So on that note, I do hope you will reconsider and bring this back again in 2 weeks and perhaps have a public hearing at the end of June or at the very least the first week in September. Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Dana Mulhern.
Good evening. I'm not sure I can say much more. Actually, the 3 previous speakers spoke on the issues that I wanted to speak to, but specifically, I truly do not understand why this keeps going over and over and over, which this council has said they want to save money. And every time you delay it because of some particular little letter, the staff have to work again and again and again. And that's thousands of dollars worth of work, and that's tax money for everybody in West Vancouver. That's number 1. Number 2, I'm very concerned about the commercial areas. The commercial area is dying, and everybody is looking for a bookstore, a shoe store, a pharmacy, but it's done. And the third thing is, this is not democracy. I am very concerned that West Vancouver is dismally not taking democratic actions. They delay, and I don't know who you think vote for you, but it's not the 3 people that happen to live in Ambleside. And I'm very disappointed. I would definitely support this going forward on June 9th and a hearing this summer, not in September. That's way big delay. Sorry, thank you.
The next speaker on the list, I believe, is Sharam Talesh.
Good evening. My name is Sharam Talesh. I'm a resident of West Vancouver. I'm a member of ULI. Is one of the largest network of real estate experts in the world. They usually have meeting with held by Governor Boza Ani with members of government. For the past 2 times we had Minister Calhoun that you were talking about. Just to let you know what he's exactly talking about, he is going very soon to take it out of the what he mentioned is 3 districts. It was West Vancouver, District of North Vancouver, and Abbotsford, believe it or not. All 3 of them are under revision, and pretty soon their suggestion is either all the landowners can directly deal with province past the local, and by doing so, there would be no public hearing if they do that, go through provincial. So whatever rezoning they do, there would be no public hearing. but we have a chance now to at least ease up. My worry is they're gonna make all the lands, all the single family houses to duplexes and townhouses, and we have no control at all. I remember exactly what they said on the last portion of their conversation, that they can come directly to the province, past the local, and if they get approved, there would be no hearing, public hearing period. I just want to mention that if you're waiting to see what the government action would be, I'm a member and I'm being there all the meeting, and this is what their action is going to be, especially in regard to District of West Vancouver and North Vancouver. Thank you very much for listening.
And the next speaker on the list is Neil Carroll.
This mic? Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Neil Carroll. I'm a member of a local group of residents called West Vancouver Community Stakeholders, but I don't really speak on behalf of them. I'm speaking as tonight very briefly as a resident and as an engineer and as a computer guy. I started with IBM, just as a little bit of background of what I'm going to say, in the mid-70s, and that betrays my age. I also worked, my client was Microsoft most recently, and worked for the last 10 years with Expedia as a senior database engineer. So I've been in and around the computer systems and airport systems and 3D systems. Now to my point, I think one of the difficulties in decision making here for a lot of people is the confidence in which they accept the analysis and recommendations of people involved in analysis. In particular, from a resident, I saw something that blew my mind away as perspective. I also am a camera person and do drone photography. And when I saw the perspective of, if you remember that foreshore that staff brought forward, showing the buildings from about half a mile wide. To me, that was the wrong perspective. That was the perspective of a seagull 300 feet in the air, 300 yards offshore. That's not the perspective from which residents can decide whether they're for or against a particular plan. I was totally amazed that photograph that I could have taken in my drone would allow anyone to form any qualitative opinion as to whether what staff was bringing forward is good, bad, or indifferent. And so I offer my background in computing just as a perspective or as an indication as to the availability of software to describe things like the 180-foot 180-foot limit for Fresh Street site. That is enormous. But to a seagull 300 feet up and 300 yards offshore, it doesn't make too much difference. So that, together with the 12, 14 stories at Clyde Avenue, again, the seagull would give the thumbs up for that. But I recommend that staff quickly review the software that's available. There's drone technology to do various data input. And one final point about the granularity of data that Mr. Hawkins referred to, talking about, well, with 3D systems, you can go down to the room and the part of the room. Well, of course, the granularity is far too small. People are not interested in that. They're interested in building forms. They're interested in view perspectives. And I would offer that comment to staff when they're looking for some software. Thank you.
Thank you. The next name on the list is Heather Mersey.
As stated, my name is Heather Mersey, and I'm the president of the Ambleside and Dunderave Residents Association. And I felt it necessary to respond to some of the things being said about this residents association, which has been part of our community since 1979, all run by volunteers. We have put many hours into being part of the process, and we appreciate being a stakeholder group. And we also try and work with the ADBIA, supporting businesses in the community, and want to see as an outcome a good plan for our community. And we have in our newsletters updated people on the Ambleside plan, as well as encouraging them to be involved in the housing survey. So when the previous speaker said he hadn't heard anything about this, well, it's in our newsletters, it's right here. And with respect to one of the counselors saying that that staff didn't know about the letter that went out, and it wasn't in correspondence. It was sent to Mr. Finlay and it was sent to correspondence. The reason it was sent out so late is because we did have a very short time in which to examine a very detailed document. And we have a great obligation to our members to make sure we understand it and can pass on our recommendations to them, give them a Coles Note version. And our intent is to have a town hall meeting. And we want to have a community not divided on this. We want to have a community that is in full support of it. And our efforts, our volunteer efforts are all about that. We just felt we didn't have enough time to do the proper job. And yes, we have asked for a bit more time, but it's with the benefit to the community overall. There's many things that are good in it, but there's still a few things we need to work out. How we best do that, please tell us. We will work however we can. But I would just like to say, in all sincerity, ADRA has been working very hard to make sure there's a good result for our community and that the community is in support of it. Thank you very much.
And the next name on the list is Sandy Lytle.
Good evening. I'm Sandy Lytle. I live in West Vancouver. First thing, I want to thank Councillor Watt for her job as acting mayor. It was trial by fire, I think, for her tonight. Secondly, I would like to remind you that a previous mayor said that letters are not a poll, and letters to correspondents are not necessarily a poll of the community and the community's opinions. And number three, I am frankly was appalled, absolutely appalled at the display tonight, the lack of respect, the patronizing attitude amongst councillors towards the community, of people in the community, towards community groups and others. People live in this community, like this community. They love this community, I think was mentioned tonight, and they are making their views known in their best interest of that community, and that needs to be respected. A little tweaking is necessary. I think it's been discussed. I think everybody agrees. And a few more weeks to get it right is not going to be the end of the earth, and people will be happy and will not be dividing the community and dividing the council. Thank you.
There are no more speakers on the list. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? No, okay. Oh, Councillor Thompson.
Staff have gone, but most planning has gone. My question is, we never, the motion failed and we didn't set a date. And we won't be able to do that until we meet again, which is in 2 weeks. Is that correct? Or Ms. Dallas?
Council can always schedule a special council meeting, call a special council meeting within and provide 24 hours notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So no other questions? Comments? Okay, so motion to adjourn? All in favor? Meeting is adjourned.